Yes. We are opening tonight's meeting for Thursday, March 3rd, 2022. We call to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
President Dawson.
Present.
Clerk Rivera. Here. Trustee Paff.
Here.
Trustee Brian Swanson. Here. Trustee Carolyn Swanson.
Bunker Horn.
I saw her.
Let's try that again. Trustee Carolyn Swanson.
Here.
Hey, very good. Gotcha.
Okay, roll call vote completed. We'll move towards adoption of this evening's agenda.
We need to announce the teleconferencing location.
Do I need to do that right here? Thank you so much. I would like to announce for the record that this meeting is being conducted pursuant to California Government Code Section 54953B concerning teleconferencing of meetings. Board member Carolyn Swanson is participating in this meeting by speakerphone from her vehicle, a white Tesla, in the school district office parking lot located at 435 Hillcrest Avenue, Pacific Grove, 93950. In accordance with the Brown Act, this location has been identified on the agenda for this evening. I would now like to ask board member Carolyn Swanson to respond to the following questions. Are you able to hear our proceedings on this end?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of the agenda for this evening?
Yes.
Has the agenda been posted at your location?
Yes.
Is your location such that any member of the public could participate in the public portions of this teleconference meeting from your location?
Yes.
Members of the board, are you able to hear board member Carolyn Swanson?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Because we are having a meeting with teleconferencing, all actions this meeting will be by roll call vote. Okay, now we'll move forward with adoption of the agenda. Okay. Board questions or comments regarding tonight's agenda?
None.
Okay, none at this time. Any public comments? Pardon?
Any changes, Ro?
Any changes?
There are no changes to the agenda unless a trustee has any changes they'd like to propose.
Make a motion to accept the agenda as presented. Second.
A motion was put forward by John Paff and seconded by Frank Rivera. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Dawson.
Yes.
Trustee Rivera. Aye. Trustee John Paff.
Aye.
Trustee Brian Swanson.
Aye.
Trustee Carolyn Swanson.
Aye.
Okay, adoption is complete and we will now move to closed session.
And just go ahead and read out what items, if you would.
Okay, let me tell you about the items before we move to.
Not yet. We're almost done. Thank you.
Okay. For this evening, the Board of Education will meet in a closed session made to consider matters appropriate for closed session in accordance with Education and Government Code. Tonight, we will deal with negotiations, collective bargaining session, planning and preparation with PGTA for the 21-22 school year, executive session between the public school employer and its designated representatives, Buck Rogaman, Song Chen Bendib, and Ralph Gomez Porras for the purpose of giving direction and updates. Secondly, negotiations, collective bargaining, session planning and prep for CSEA. All else on this is the same as the preceding. Number 3, public discipline, dismissal, release, complaint, Government Code 54957. Is there any public comment on closed session topics? Seeing none, we will now adjourn to closed session. Please. We are now reconvening in open session. We covered several items in closed session this evening. On item 1 and 2 regarding negotiations with both PGTA and CSEA, information was received, direction given, and we received no action. On the third item, which was a public employee discipline dismissal release complaint for Government Code 54957. Action was taken. The board voted unanimously in closed session to non-reelect one certified employee. The employee number is 152397. And now we'll move on, please, to the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Rivera, will you help us? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Communications, and we will start with written communication. There was obviously lots of stuff going back and forth. We had a couple or three letters from students regarding some conditions at the high school, with it being too cold, clocks not working, and very well written, articulated their points beautifully, and I know that there was action taken on that. We had another letter from an alumni regarding one of the retirees coming up and ways we might honor that individual. We also had a community member who had noted in the newspaper about the Carmel Student Advisory Committee that they had put in place over there, and wondered if we could do something along that same line. And then the last many notes were on both the district mapping, with various opinions being given on how we might consider moving forward. And also, obviously, with the changes that have come up that we'll be discussing in more detail during the COVID update, where we stand with masking, and parents, a lot of parents voicing concern about how that will look, how that might affect their individual families. And just to repeat, the board, all of us get those letters, all of us read those letters. And as a board, we like to, I'm the one responsible to respond on behalf of the board, but I want the community always to know that everybody is reading their concerns, and we take that time very seriously. And I just want to reiterate that. So are there any other letters that came in we need to be aware of?
I have a couple.
Okay,
I have one in support of AB 361 resolution, an email about CTE tenure, and an email about bias incidents taking place at the middle school. And those are all that I have.
yes, that's very good. You're exactly right. There was one about a behavior at the middle school that just came in, and I think that got handled today. So thanks for bringing that up. And also, we did see the one about the AB 361. So thank you for bringing those up. Any others from any board members? Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Let's move with board member comments. Can we start with you? Oh, please. We're so happy to see you tonight in your bright red jacket.
Well, we just had our winter ball this last weekend. We had it at the Monterey Conference Center. We sold about 300 tickets. There was from what I saw, everybody had a great time. We had live music for 45 minutes at the beginning, and it was our own. It was a breaker jazz combo band that they had put together themselves, and it was really fun.
Thank you.
Quickly, the musical Susical, which was put on at the middle school, was a lot of fun, and the Bull Wearers and Mr. Roach and the personnel at the middle school and many people contributed to make that happen. It was really a good show, so very enjoyable.
Yes, please, Frank.
Yeah, I was able to see that as well, and my family absolutely loved it. So well done. And I ran into Trustee Path at the grocery store, who had painted hands. So thank you, Trustee Path, for contributing to that as well. It was a blast. I also just wanted to share my excitement about the professional development day that happened last Monday.
Yeah.
It sounds like it just went off fantastic, and I'm so glad to hear about that. Yeah, and then hopefully we could just ride this wave, but this is a momentum we just keep going forward, and it will help us make our decisions based on moving closer and closer to equity. And two quotes I want to finish with. The first one is because this is how I'm facing how I make my decisions. I want everyone to know that I suspect we will probably have split votes coming up in the future. The first one was from former President Obama out of his book, The Audacity of Hope. And he states, values are faithfully applied to the facts before us, while ideology overrides whatever facts call theory into question. So I urge us all to look and focus on our values, not just follow our ideologies. So data-based decisions. And then the last quote, I finished up the Masters in Governance course, the first one this morning, and it was a blast. I loved it. And there's a quote that we read this morning that I wanted to share. You might have heard it before, from Lillian Katz. Each of us must come to care about everyone else's children. We must recognize that the welfare of our children and grandchildren is ultimately linked to the welfare of all the other people's children. After all, when one of our children needs life-saving surgery, someone else's child will perform it. If one of our children is threatened or harmed by violence, someone else's child will be responsible for the violent act. The good life for our own children can be secured only if a good life is also secured for all other people's children.
That's very nice. Thank you. Mr. Swanson.
I wanted to thank Principal Roach, along with our PE instructors, Mr. Hall and Dory and Bryce Gamble. I did the boxing strong circuit this morning. I remembered vaguely saying when it was presented that I would like to do it, and then Sean reminded me last week that I'd said I would do that, and it it was really great though. And it's like I'm going to change a little bit of my own workout routine going forward, I think, to include jumping rope, because that was 5 minutes of jumping rope is really hard. But the rest of it too, what you could see the kids were learning as far as balance and coordination, and it works their entire body, and they were having fun mostly too. So, and I had fun, and this is, I failed a PE class when I was in college too. So it was just cool I hadn't been in a PE class forever, and partly because of that failure that I had, but I highly recommend it. And I hope when it comes up again, we do it again, because it was really fantastic.
Excellent. Trustee Carolyn Swanson.
Yeah, thanks, Christy. I don't actually have very much today. I did see my Facebook feed full of the Seussical musical, and so much joy and love and passion in that. And so that was really heartwarming. I was watching that all weekend. And then I did just want to mention that I dropped into the site council meeting at Forest Grove just as a parent, because that's where my child attends. And that was a really wonderful meeting to hear kind of from the teachers how they felt about the professional development that took place related to our kind of inclusion movement. And I just want to also mention that any parents that are on who are kind of wishing that they could be more involved with their school but aren't sure where to put their energy, that every one of our schools has a site council. It's comprised of teachers and classified staff and parents and the principal. And it's a wonderful way to kind of get your voice heard. So I just want to mention that site councils exist. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. We get the opportunity a lot of times to go and be parts of programs, and I attended it didn't sound real positive, but I figured I should know, a workshop called Chaos in the Boardroom, for a lot of the craziness that's going on throughout the entire nation. And it was held by the CSBA rep and had people from all around, and it was quite informative. So I appreciated that. And I also felt real delighted as an unemployed person to go to the community equity kickoff for the schools and to be able to be a part of that and hear that as that was laid out, and then to later read how wonderfully successful the beginning of that was with the different individuals now who will kind of carry that forward. So that's some really good news. So thank you, everybody, for those comments. And now we'll move on to the superintendent report.
Thank you, Madam President. Actually, I'm going to defer most of this to the meeting because we got a lot on the agenda, but I wanted to just reflect briefly on what was already mentioned in regards to the successful professional development that we had regarding equity. And I think just speaking for myself and my observation, I was lucky to be able to sit in on a number of the presentations, couldn't quite get to all of them, but just incredible conversations happening around the topic of cultural proficiency and acknowledging the work that is ahead of us and the successful work that we have already done in the past, and trying to link those experiences up to the work that we want to continue. As you know, this professional development program for our staff is slated for 3 years, and this is just the start. And I think it was a really great start. A lot of very heartfelt conversations, a lot of emotion, a lot of reaffirming of the tasks that are set before us. I just absolutely want to re-acknowledge just how amazingly well the staff did. Not a surprise, but it was just wonderful to see, and a lot of positive feedback coming back from it as well. And in particular, looking forward to the now smaller sort of subgroup that's going to meet to really dig deep and then be able to bring that work back and help lead their sites. And that next step happens on this next week. So we're looking forward to that work happening, and it's going to be spearheaded by Dr. Flores and Dr. Nunez. And I also want to just comment that the Lindsays, who again are the kind of the acknowledged gurus of this work for many, many years. Number one, they're in retirement, and the fact that they were willing to come out of retirement to participate with us in this endeavor spoke volumes. And they wanted to make sure that I let the board know how proud they were of the work that our staff has done, and the feedback that they got from staff and the work that they watched the staff perform really impressed them. And Dr. Randall Lindsay just kept repeating that as I walked them back to his vehicle. So that's really just overwhelming to hear that in a sense coming from him. They also want to continue to participate with us to the extent that they can and ask to be invited back for conversations. We're definitely going to take them up on that. And then we are looking forward to continuing that work with the administrative team as we plan the administrative retreat. Usually it's towards the end of summer. This year is going to be right after school that's out. We're going to meet for our 3 days, and we're going to take a deep dive as well into the work that's happening with equity so that we can kind of get ourselves ready to go for the beginning of the school year, and looking forward to continued conversations. So thanks to all the staff, our administrators, certificated, classified. Our classified did participate too. I want to highlight that as well. All of the folks that had the opportunity to participate and did just appreciated their voice as well. As I mentioned a few times, especially when we were kind of going through sort of a evaluation, that it's that professional development is a sort of professional development. There really aren't any titles. I mean, we don't really, for a moment there in the conversation, we are just human beings struggling with a hard issue and talking about how we can work better together on behalf of our students. And so the whole title of principal or superintendent or teacher or custodian, it all just sort of fades for a moment, and we can acknowledge each other as educators working towards a common goal. And I just really appreciated that opportunity as well. So anyway, I can assure you that your faith in us in moving forward with this, I think, was well placed, and we're looking forward to the continued work. And I'll leave it at that for this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. PGUSD staff comments on non-agenda items. Okay, thanks. Buck, you go ahead first, please.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Buck Rogeman, the principal of Forest Grove, and I just wanted to thank the board for giving me the opportunity to serve as president of the Elementary Education Council for the Association of California School Administrators. This past week, as my dual role as the California president for the National Association of Elementary School Principals, I was allowed to travel to Washington, DC with a group of folks to try to talk to our state, well, our federal level officials about some important funding issues that we're hoping to influence at Washington, but I wouldn't have been able to go without the support of the board and also without the coverage that was provided at Forest Grove by our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Ani Silva, by our teachers, Rini Valdez, Beth Sina, and Marin Sanchez. They were able to keep the school running and running well in my absence. And I just need to say that it was really a powerful experience to be able to go to Washington and talk to them about helping to fund the teacher and educator pipeline nationwide. There's also, we lobbied on behalf of legislation that would keep funding coming for the mental health services that would serve our students and serve our schools, as well as the infrastructure and facilities in improvements that we are hoping to have. And I was there at a really exciting time. It was during the time where the president gave the State of the Union address, and also while there were demonstrations in support of Ukraine and everything that is going on with that situation. And I think that one of the things I walked away with was just that understanding that we cannot ever take the freedom that we have in our country and in our town for granted. And the more that we can be civil about the discussions that we have in our own country, the more progress that we're going to make. And it was an inspiring week to say the least. And I just want to thank the board for the opportunity to do that. And then I also, we received a message from Principal Garcia about the passing of Carolyn Hawes. And any of you that had the opportunity to work with Carolyn when she was serving as the librarian over at PG High would know just the level of service that she gave to students and staff. I would always see her face kind of light up when research paper season started, because she knew that we'd be spending plenty of time in that room and that she would get to be with, the seniors as they were working on their senior projects. And she gave some great service to the district. And she is one of those amazing people that had a life that was very, very well lived. And I just want to make sure that she was remembered at the board meeting here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Buck. Shannon Mccarty, please.
Hi, everyone. This is Shannon Mccarty. I'm a teacher at Forest Grove, as well as our PGTA president. I just wanted to say that I attended the Understanding the Experience of the LGBTQ+ students, a guide tonight for parents and caregivers. It's kind of at the same time as the board meeting. It was from 6 to 7. So I was just there. And I just wanted to say thank you to the counselors of our school district, and just that they brought this to our district. And I think as an LGBTQ+ adult, this was something that is super valuable. And I wish that we had something like this when I was a student struggling to come out to my parents with my identity and all of those sorts of things. So I just wanted to say kind of a shout out to PGUSD and thank our counselors for bringing something that is so valuable to our students. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that it was tonight during the time that we were here. It'd sure be nice if the board could see if there was any kind of handout or anything that they did. I'd love to see that. We'd be very.
I know that Zoe recorded it, so it could be something that she could share with you all.
I would appreciate that. Thank you so much. Any other hands up? Ani Silva, please.
Good evening, members of the board. Ani Silva, Director of Curriculum and Instruction. I just wanted to kind of reiterate or kind of piggyback on what Ralph said about the Equity Day that we had. Cultural proficiency is what it is. But I want to just want to let you know too that on March 9th, we're going to have the committee, the committee of 30 plus a few. And I just want to reiterate that this committee is based on us all being human beings, the experiences that we come to the table with, because all of our experiences are so valuable. And the members of the committee represent our classified staff, our administrators, and our certificated teachers. We have members from the district office. I mean, I'm just so excited about this opportunity for us to come together and represent not just the voices of where we come from, but the voices of many. So I'm just very excited. So I just wanted to say that. That's it.
Thank you for sharing that, Ani. Any other hands at this point? Okay, none at this point.
Individuals desiring to address the board. Public comment on any item of interest to the public that is within the board's jurisdiction will be heard. The board will also take public comment on each specific action item prior to board action on each item. The board will allow a reasonable amount of time for public comment on each agenda item, not to exceed 3 minutes per speaker and no more than 20 minutes per agenda item pursuant to board policy 9323. Speakers will be called sequentially until there is no speaker coming forward on the agenda item or the amount of time allocated for the agenda item has elapsed, whichever comes first. This meeting of the Board of Education is a business meeting of the board conducted in public. Please note that the Brown Act limits the board's ability to respond to public comment. The board may choose to direct items to the administration for action or place an item on a future agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Rivera. Any individuals this evening? Ms. Shamas, please.
This on? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Beth Shamas. I just wanted to comment on, we've had an expulsion in this last month, and it was the third expulsion you've had in 6 months. I think that's quite high. And I'd like to see that is being looked at in terms of indicating an issue. I saw that Audrey Cordova is a new therapist, social worker therapist at the high school now. And I'd like to see if maybe she would ever do a presentation to the board about what she's doing. MPUSD has a thing on the news tonight. You might see it. They have a teen mental health first aid that they're implementing. And I really think that we need to be looking at something like that. I'd like to hear from students too about at the high school and the middle school. Because 3 expulsions in 6 months, I don't know when the last time we had 3 expulsions in 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you see any raised hands? Okay, we'll move forward, please, to consent agenda. Items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine and or may have been discussed at a previous board meeting. There is no discussion of these items prior to the board meeting vote unless a member of the board requests specific items be discussed and or removed from the consent agenda. Each item on the consent agenda approved by the Board of Trustees shall be deemed to have been considered in full and adopted as recommended. Board members, are there any concerns about tonight's consent?
Nope, not for me.
Trustee Carolyn Swanson?
None for me.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Also move.
Second.
Okay, a motion was made by Brian Swanson and seconded by Dr. Frank Rivera. The consent agenda is adopted.
Pardon me, Madam President.
Oops.
If public comment.
Public comment. Oh, I was on such a roll. Okay, public comment? Oh, roll continues. Okay. So,
And then a vote.
and then a vote. We're right there. Questions? All right. We have the motion, so roll call vote.
Trustee Dawson,
Aye.
Trustee Rivera,
Aye.
Trustee Pat,
Aye.
Trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
Trustee Carolyn Swanson.
Hi.
It's unanimous. All right. Next, we'll move on, please, to the public hearing. regarding proposed composition of trustee area maps and adoption of resolution approving transition to trustee areas maps. Dr. Porras?
Thank you, Madam President. We do have our representatives here who have been with us all along to bring us through the gate on this discussion from Lozano Smith. And so I'd like to go ahead and, if you permit, to go ahead and have them come up and do their presentation for us. That will help guide you through the remainder of this discussion. And I do want to point out for the members of the audience, because this looks just a little different than before, we have a public hearing and then essentially an action taken under this just sequentially. So the board cover reads a public hearing and then adoption of one of the maps. So for the public hearing portion of it, if you'll be okay with it, we'll go ahead and have our presentation. I think, Jonathan, are you starting us off tonight? Or, okay, Harold, there you go.
Okay, thank you so much.
Work the magic. Why don't you, we'll stay consistent. Thank you, Harold Freeman. It's good to see you again here tonight. And as was commented, see if we can help take you through the gate and get to the finish line. Tonight, I'm going to be introducing this matter, and then Jonathan's going to walk you through some of the maps and sequencing issues. We have Shalise Tilton, who is a demographer available for questions remotely. So we're going to be doing a little bit of her part for her since we're here live with you. If her name sounds familiar, Jeff Tilton has been the demographer you're working with. And yes, that is not a coincidental last name. They're both with National Demographics. So if we can go to that next slide. I really just wanted to briefly chat about, are we? There we go. I just wanted to briefly remind everybody where we've been so we can understand where we're going. Under the California Voting Rights Act, school districts and other local agencies have the opportunity, if they so desire, to move from what is a general election where everybody within a school district votes for all board members to a by trustee area election. And you've heard us talk to you about this before, but just to remind you again, that means that for 5 board members, the district is divided into what in essence is 5 similarly sized areas, sized by population, not by physical size. And each of those trustee areas elects a trustee from their area. What's been happening around the state of California, as we've also discussed with you, is a push by various different groups to see local agencies move in the direction of by trustee area elections. And the California Voting Rights Act basically says that if you move to by trustee area elections, that is the one way that you can assure that you are free from liability and that you've moved in the direction of compliance with state laws in this area. And many school districts around the state have gotten demands to have you pushed in this direction. When you receive one of those demands, it will come in the end with an attorney's fee demand as well. Your board decided last April, it's almost a year ago now, to go ahead and adopt a resolution of intent to move to by trustee area elections. And as I've noted to you before, that was very well timed and thought out by the board, because months later you received one of these demands, which was then withdrawn after the person who sent it was informed that you've actually already started the process. So that was the good news for you. So once you go down the road of this process, you have to have a total of 5 different public hearings. 2 take place before any maps are considered by the board, 2 take place after, and then the 5th is what we're here for tonight, where you actually make your decision about the map, you make your decision about the sequencing. And as a reminder, once you've made that decision, it goes to the County Committee on School District Organization, and they give it the final thumbs up or thumbs down. The way the statute is written, those are their choices. They agree with your map and you're moved to that, or they do not. So what you see on the slide here is just to walk you back through the process you've been through. You held the first two statutorily required pre-map hearings back in August 19th and September 16th of 2021. The census data was delayed, as you'll recall, this year because of COVID, and didn't actually come out until August the 12th. And then didn't come out in a way that was digestible for public agencies until later in September. Following that, you had your first draft map hearing where certain maps were considered a total of 4 maps. were delivered to you, and you had the opportunity to have public input on them on January 20th. The next 3 maps that came out of that meeting, so once you had the input, the board gave input, 3 more maps were developed. So 7 maps in all, which is quite robust for this type of process. On February 10th, you held that public hearing, and that night the board identified 2 maps, the Teal and Lupin. I love these names always because this particular demographer doesn't like to call them map 1, 2, 3, 4 because
Right.
it sounds like there's a priority there. So we go neutral with the colors, but those were the 2 maps that were chosen as your tentative finals to take a look at. And again, tonight is your opportunity to make a selection on those maps. This is usually something the demographer presents, and you've seen it before, so I'm just going to mention it again briefly. There are a few rules as you go through districting, as it is sometimes called. 10 years from now, you will get to go through what's known as redistricting when the census data comes out again to revisit these boundaries. Right now, we're in the districting process. Federal law requires that each of the trustee areas have a roughly proportional or equal population to one another. The total variance that is accepted under federal law is 10%. So the 2 maps you have before you tonight both are within that confine. There's the Federal Voting Rights Act that you also have to comply with as you go through this. The 2 maps that you have before you, we concur with the demographer, comply with both the CVRA and the Federal Voting Rights Act. And then you're not supposed to engage in racial gerrymandering. That is, for example, a situation where you would say, to get a particular population, for example, of Asian Pacific Islander voters, we're going to have one long tendril that runs through the district to get from one trustee area to another to bring them in. One of the oddities of the process that we've talked about with you before is that you are not supposed to consider race as the primary basis for these trustee areas you're developing, but the CVRA requires you to consider race when you are developing these trustee areas. So it's a balance. It has to be more than just based on race alone. And ultimately, the objectives of the federal and the state law is to enhance the voting power of protected classes. It's to give the ability for minority groups to have a stronger voice in elections. That doesn't necessarily mean to elect somebody who is of the same race. It's to elect that group's preferred candidate if there's a preferred candidate. So the example we always give is, let's say in a particular trustee area, district-wide, you may be 10% Latino citizens of voting age population, or CVAP is what we look at when we compare this. But perhaps you can create a trustee area that is 22% Latino, and that therefore gives the Latino population a stronger vote. The Federal Voting Rights Act does indicate that if you can get to 50% plus 1 of a particular protected class in a trustee area, you're supposed to do so. Pacific Grove, you don't have the population that supports that. So you're okay under the FVRA because you are not rejecting an option that is that 50% plus 1. And then just really briefly, the California criteria, things you look at, geographically contiguous. You can't have little islands that are disconnected in the trustee areas. You're supposed to consider neighborhoods and communities of interest that can include socioeconomic geographic areas that can be kept together. You're supposed to have easily identifiable boundaries that tracks different parcel maps, areas, and will track streets, will track areas often that are known. And then you are supposed to be compact. Compact meaning, again, that you don't have these tendrils that run everywhere with trustee areas that wrap around each other. And again, you have 2 maps before you tonight that meet all of those criteria, particularly the compactness and the geographical contiguity. And then there's other issues that you can also look at traditionally. One of them is respecting the voters' choices. And what we mean by that is that it is lawful for you to consider whether you're going to be pairing 2 existing trustees in one trustee area. And we'll be talking to you more about that in Jonathan's presentation a little bit. There is a little bit of confusion because for cities and counties under the Fair Map Act in California, they've pulled back on the ability to consider where incumbents live. School districts are not bound by that law. And there's federal law that says it is okay to consider where incumbents live. And the notion there, the demographers always like to say, you don't want to decide something for the voters by the stroke of a pen. So if the voters supported 5 board members to get on the board, saying now that 2 are in the same area are paired and only 1 can be elected from that area, you're essentially deciding something for the voters. So that's the logic of why that's an issue you can consider. And then future population growth, not as much of an issue for you in other areas that are having very high growth, new development happening. You can take into consideration where population trends are headed. Here it's an established community, only small infill development from time to time, so it's less of an issue. And if we can go to the next slide. And then just really briefly on neighborhoods and communities of interest, this is another consideration that you undertake when you're looking at these maps. Some of them are as simple as what is your neighborhood? What are the geographic boundaries of that neighborhood? You listen to the public, you listen to the input. There are times there is no way to get around dividing a particular defined or considered neighborhood. There's nothing unlawful about doing that, but you are supposed to take into consideration the possibility of keeping those areas together. And the reason I say sometimes you have to divide it, there are simply times that for population balancing or other purposes, you have to divide an established neighborhood. It's not unlawful. So this is just an area of consideration that you undertake. And then communities of interest we've talked to you about before, it can be a lot of different things. It can be people that attend the same church, people that are in the same Little League, people that shop in the same Safeway. You know, how do we kind of define the areas around that? So those are all considerations that went into these maps. I know you've heard that from us before, but for the benefit of those watching at home, we wanted to make sure that we covered that again. And with that, Jonathan is going to put on his demographer hat. That's really Shalise, who's in the background, and we can answer questions later, is going to walk you through the maps.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Harold. So as Harold mentioned, just a quick refresher, these are the 7 maps that were presented throughout this process. The 4 on top were originally presented. Then at the first post-map hearing, the board had some comments, wanted there to be a couple of more maps to consider, specifically maps that did not take into account where current trustees lived. And so 3 more maps at the bottom were created, and each of those maps pair current board members together in the same trustee area. So at the second post-map hearing, the board identified 1 map from the top 4, the teal map, which is in the top right corner on the slides, and then also identified the Lupin map, the one at the bottom middle, as their 2 favorites moving forward. So we've identified those as board finalists, and I'll go through each of those in turn. So going with the Lupin map, I want to draw attention to the 3 trustees that live in the same area. So the way that this map ended up being drawn, as you can see, currently trustee area 1 is vacant. There's no current board member that lives in that area. And actually, just to take a step back, I think it's good to remind everyone that's watching of the terms of the current trustee members at the moment. So the trustees that are up for election in 2022 are trustees Dawson, Rivera, and Path, whereas in 2024, Brian Swanson and Carolyn Swanson will be the trustees up for election. And as I go through the sequencing, proposed sequencing, you'll understand why this is relevant. So as you can see at the moment, the trustee area in this map, trustee area 1 is vacant. And you can also see that trustee area 4 is vacant. And there are 3 trustees, trustee Rivera and trustee Brian Swanson and Carolyn Swanson, would reside in the same trustee area 3. And so this is where the sequencing comes in. For this map, there are actually a couple of, well, for this map and multiple maps that have trustees paired together, there's quite a few possible permutations or combinations of when each trustee area is up for election and what implications that results in. So what we've identified here are 2 pretty, not all of them, but 2 election sequencing scenarios that make sense. And I'm going to walk you through those at the moment. So what individuals or the board members and people watching this might consider in trying to determine which map they prefer. This Lupin map has at least one proposed sequencing, and then I'll go through the two alternative sequencings, and I'll try to go through this as cleanly as possible. The proposed sequencing would result in 2024, there will be three trustee areas up for election. The trustee area 2, where trustee Path currently resides, trustee area 5, where trustee Dawson resides, and then also trustee area 3, which currently has 3 trustee members in there. And what happens is all 3 of those trustees would be allowed, if they want, to run for that trustee area. The thing is, in order to do so for trustees Swanson, both trustees Swanson, Brian Swanson and Carolyn Swanson, since their terms don't actually end until 2024, they would have a choice to basically relinquish the last 2 years of their term in order to run in 2022. There is an open question as to whether or not they relinquish their term prior to running in order to run for the seat that goes from 2022 to 2026, or alternatively, if they're allowed to run before having to resign their seat just to see if they are able to win. That's an open question, and which would likely be determined by the registrar of voters. But I just wanted to throw those options out there. So what that means is that there won't be a trustee elected to the 2 vacant seats, because both of those seats aren't up for election until 2024 in the proposed sequencing. Looking at the alternative sequencing, the key difference is that only one of the vacant trustee areas will be up for election in 2024, while the other is up for election in 2022. So if the board ends up preferring the Lupin map and preferring the alternative sequencing, that would mean that in 2022, there will be a new trustee that could be elected immediately. Up in 2022, this would happen in November. It would either be a resident from trustee area 1, therefore leaving trustee area 4 vacant until 2024, or the converse, you can have someone from trustee area 4 elected in 2022, leaving trustee area 1 vacant until 2024. So that could be something that the public and the board considers, depending on those areas, trustee area 1, trustee area 4. Is it important to try to get someone from that area elected immediately? If so, then placing trustee area 1 or 4 up for election in 2022, that's something that the public can consider. The implications of having trustee area 3 up for election in 2024 would mean that trustee Rivera, whose current term ends in 2022, the area in which he resides currently, trustee area 3, would not have an election. Therefore, he would not be able to run for a trustee, for a board to become a trustee in that area in 2022, because there would be no election. That election doesn't happen until 2024. That about covers those sequencings, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end. Going to the next map, which is the teal map, this is going to go a lot quicker, because turns out this map does not pair any trustees at all, and the proposed sequencing places each trustee area's election consistent with when the current board members' terms end. Therefore, there's, in 2022, trustees Rivera, trustee Path, trustee Dawson will all be up for election in the trustee areas that they currently reside in. And So that's really the only proposed sequencing option available for the teal map. So I wonder, is this a good time to ask if anyone has questions on the sequencing, if I could explain any of that? I know it was a lot, so it might be easier to answer direct questions if the board wants.
Yeah, we can see. Are there any questions at this time regarding sequencing?
No,
None
I'm
here?
good.
Nope.
Yeah, I think you did a great job.
Thank
Trustee
you.
Carolyn Swanson, do you have a question regarding the sequencing?
I do not.
Okay, yeah, highly complicated, and you took it step at a time. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Wow.
So, yeah, at this point, maybe just jump to the next slide. I think it just shows the two maps. It could be on the screen and we can leave that on the screen for public comment.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, let's go ahead then with public comment. Say what, John? Help me. Okay, I thought that's what we were just doing. Those were questions. Now we'll go to comments. Trustee Paff.
Well, a number of the letters said that lupine solves a problem that there's underrepresentation up in the Del Monte Park thing, except when you go back, the last 20 years of school districts or trustees, there has been someone, except to this most recent term, there's been someone from that area in a total general election. So, and if we start to argue about whether or not we're trying to get a quote underrepresented segment, I think that that's not the case as well, since it skips the area which is right into Pebble Beach as its own separate area. Those 72 homes which are part of Pebble Beach, for which we really want to have the county give us more money because they owe it to us. They're not in either one of these. Well, they're in the teal map in a much better position. We don't cover either one of those, underrepresented as people or underrepresented as a minority. And that lupine map is really gerrymandered. I mean, that's hard for me to support. So.
Okay, thank you. Brian, do you have anything at this time?
Not really anything that Trustee Paff didn't just say. So no. I mean, the teal, I like it. It's concise. I do. You know what? I guess I do have something to say.
Okay, it sounded like you were speaking to me.
During the presentation too, one of the things that the gentleman spoke about was that you don't want to make decisions for the voters based upon how we draw these lines. And with our teal map, that doesn't happen. With lupine, I mean, I don't know what the audience online was thinking as they're going through the explanation, but it's a bit of a head spinner too at times is when you look at that. And just as a map too, lupine looks pretty crazy. So I guess I did have something to say, but that's all I have to say now.
Okay, thank you so much. Trustee Carolyn Swanson.
Yeah, thanks. I'm actually in favor of the lupine map. I really like that it has Del Monte Park all together. And I think the reason that the lupine map has us kind of in a runoff in Area 3 is because District 4, Del Monte Park, doesn't have somebody serving them. I don't remember a trustee from Del Monte Park being on the board. I think there has been folks who have ran but not been elected. So I think that's important. It's one of the neighborhoods in Pacific Grove that it has a high minority group. It's got a younger demographic. It's got a lot of children in that area. I like that Pebble Beach is how it is on the lupine map. It includes Pebble Beach and then also this arm of shoreline homes that are a similar demographic. I know PG can be kind of homogenous, and so to me, Del Monte Park is kind of an area that maybe one of our we kind of have two communities of interest. We've got the Del Monte Park area and we've got the Pebble Beach area. So I like that Del Monte Park is kept together to its exact boundaries and not cut in half. And I do like that it doesn't take incumbency into account. I realize that we are allowed at the school board level to kind of have that be one of our lesser priorities. And this is a balancing act, but I am completely fine with not taking into account any incumbency because these maps will be here for the next 10 years. And I can't guarantee that any of the trustees that are here today are going to still be on the board in 10 years. So I want this to really serve our community and not serve our trustees.
May I
Yes,
just
could you
address one item? Mike Nickum was a trustee and lives in Del Monte Park from 2000 to 2012. And Debbie Crandall was a trustee living there from 2012 to, I'm sorry, 2010 until 2020.
10 years. Okay, thank you for sharing that. You want to?
Yeah, well, I agree with Trustee Carolyn insofar as that these are going to be here for 10 years, so we do need to make them count. I would like to just point out a couple of things that we heard from the community. There was the Cynics border, and I'm still trying to wrap my brain around why that matters, because we do have trustees on both sides of Cynics. So with respect to the elementary schools, they will be represented. They won't be shut out. And in light of our strong push towards equity, I think reconfiguration might be popping up again soon. And then that just renders that argument moot right there. So there's the Cynics border. The teal map I'm leaning towards because it is more compact. It doesn't look as gerrymandered. It's more compact. And if we look at the percent deviation, it has a smaller percent deviation. So each area has a closer number of representative or population density in there. The Del Monte Park. So I looked at this and I said, okay, it does have a solid concentration of younger voters and minorities that we really need to consider. And they really do need to have as strong as vote as possible. So with that respect, if you look at area 4 in the Lupin map and compare it to area 4 in the teal map, looking at area 4 versus area 4, both maps, I actually went through and I picked out a few of the obvious demographics that we should be considered, looking at, and I calculated the percent difference. And in doing so, I found that voting age Hispanic population, their voting power is 21% stronger in the teal map than in the Lupin map. If we look at those who have Spanish spoken at home, it is 10% stronger in the teal map. If we look at non-Hispanic Black community, 50% stronger vote in the teal map. If we look at those that are of voting age, 100% stronger in the teal map. If we look at school age children, 0 to 19, there's 4% more in the teal map. If we look at education, in the teal map, area 4 has 13% smaller population with a college degree. And if we look at renters, to give them a stronger vote, they would have a 6% stronger vote in the teal map. And our lowest income, again, we should look at that, the socioeconomic. Our lowest income bracket would give them 11% stronger vote in the teal map. So in summary, teal is the most compact, less gerrymandered. Teal has the smallest percent population deviations. Teal gives the strongest voting power to our communities with the lowest socioeconomic status, the underrepresented and minority groups, and families with school-age children. So in the spirit of the California Voting Rights Act, I think that the teal map is the right way to go. Epilogue. Now, with respect to the trustees area, and of course, if you were paying attention, then my future definitely is at hand here. I'm a husband and a father first, and the first time my family tells me the sacrifice is too large, it's time to step down, then I will. I'm also a proud Progrovian since I started kindergarten in David Avenue. I love this community and I will serve it until they ask me to step down. As someone who's serving this community, I think that the best option is teal because it does of all those the data points that I just pointed out. In fact, a vote for the Lupin Map might be considered a vote for my political ambitions. Just looking at it and looking at everyone here knows that the size of my family in this area, and the Lupin actually would give me more secured votes. So I just want to say that, yeah, so those are, I think that this is going back to what I opened up with that Obama quote, that we really do need to look at our values. And I think I just gave enough evidence that in the spirit of the California Voting Rights Act, we need to march towards equity step by step. And I think the teal map does that for us.
Okay, very well said. I had not looked at those statistics, so I really appreciate you putting those together. English major, science, math guy.
Yeah.
And I thank you for that. I'm about the feelings of people. And here's what I'll talk about. We were elected to these positions. We can't pretend we're not here. We can't pretend there weren't elections that got us into these seats. So if I'm looking at these maps, part of what I want to look at is continuity, stability, and not creating a lot of chaos, just trying to understand you. It took everything I could to just try to stay focused on the sequencing, the alternative sequencing, and then the alternative sequencing. It's pretty crazy. So I think that we're here. I think that to see 2 vacancies and have 3 people head to head, I just, that's very off-putting for me. And I know when you began speaking tonight, Harold, you addressed that the at-large vote and that, with the thing of our pen to just disavow what the community has voted for, was never our intention. I do believe in certain areas when I spent a lot of years in Los Angeles Unified. And if you're talking San Fernando Valley and somebody 40 minutes south of the airport in Inglewood is telling you what should happen in different, to me, those are screaming needs with that kind of mass population. We are a small, wonderful community. And I think we can pay attention to these stats. The data is very important, but I also think less chaos and to have the possibility of 4 new board members coming on, it discounts that it takes a while to assimilate and become good, I think, at being a board member. So you don't want a lot of rookies coming in at once. That would just, I think, to be tremendous upheaval. So I strongly and more strongly support the teal map after hearing the statistics. So now we will hear public comment. Beth Shamas, please.
I agree the teal map is much better than the lupine. And in the teal map, you do have a boundary that does reach out to the all the apartment buildings. Yeah, and then I think it's incumbent on the board to be aware of what areas need more, if not parent representation. Lots of times that's what's missing in some of the apartment dwellers, that they don't, they're working 2 jobs or whatever. So you really have to do a lot of outreach to get them involved. And that's a board member's responsibility. So I think you guys can do it. And I mean, yeah, I believe that going through that upheaval on voting, I didn't understand it, but I just think we're just starting this. I went down to the post office and passed out these papers to people because I know a lot of people, they don't know it. They just don't know. If they don't have kids in the district, they don't know this is happening. It would be very confusing if you had that sequencing for the
Yeah.
lupine. So I vote for teal. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. Additional public comment? Mrs. McNary.
I don't know if I'm on video because it's still on screen share, but good evening, Jennifer McNary here. I just wanted to express my support for the Lupin map. I'm curious about the comments by one of the trustees describing the maps as gerrymandered or not as gerrymandered. So I was hoping for clarification. I didn't think either of the maps was gerrymandered. And I was also curious as to how many comments or questions were received or comments were received in favor of either the teal map or the Lupin map from the public leading up to this meeting. Thank you.
Who mentioned the gerrymandering? Did you want to respond to that?
I mentioned gerrymandered. I just, my comment was meant to lend towards the fact that the teal map is more compact, looks more natural.
Okay, we did definitely get letters in favor of lupine, definitely. So there were some that were like that. I don't know that I got them necessarily for teal. That's about all I have to say for that.
You know, and as for, I'll go a little further on gerrymandering because I think John had mentioned it too, and I concurred. It's like when you take a look at a map that looks like great effort was made to try to make something fit. You know, it's like you look at Lupine, you know, and it takes up almost half of Pacific Grove. It does, you know, that's part of what we're talking about here. Are things that look natural, but even beyond the look, I think it's like, I mean, after Frank presented the figures, and thank you for doing what you did too.
Very helpful.
I couldn't support teal. Well, I support it even more strongly than ever. So again, thank you for putting that all together. It's like, it really makes sense. It's like, I almost lived in Del Monte. All right, well, I did actually live in Del Monte Forest, and not when I got elected, but by about a few months. So.
Okay. Any other public comments at this time? Elliot Hazen, please.
Hi, thank you so much. I first want to just thank Frank for those detailed statistics, because frankly, that has changed my opinion more towards the teal map than when I came into this meeting. So I think that is critically important and would have been nice to have earlier in the process. So I do really appreciate that. I did want to make one just slight rebuttal to the point about, you know, I realize legally it is okay to draw the boundaries based on trustees, but I think based on if the goal of the Fair Rights Act is to have equal representation, past elections did not have that. So I do think there is some importance to make sure we are drawing based on the best long-term boundaries, as Trustee Carolyn Swanson mentioned as well. But again, all that said, this discussion has been really helpful for me as a citizen, so thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Miller, please.
Yes. First of all, I want to appreciate the attorney's explanation of something that was extremely complicated, and I was able to follow it step by step. So thank you so much. I'd also like to thank Trustee Frank for his comparison of the stats, which started to sway me. But then when I looked at the numbers for the teal and the lupin, usually there was only 1 or 2 percentage point differences rather than 20 or 30% differences. So they seem very much aligned, really. My big question has to do with the people who live in the community of interest, Del Monte Park. I don't know if anyone from that area is in the audience tonight or is on Zoom and could, tell us how they feel about the two maps. I would really like to hear their comments. And I believe you noted that a number of letters had come in from that area, I assume it was from that area, in support of the Lupin map. Maybe they were coming from other places, but I'd sort of like to hear more of the arguments for the Lupin map, because I do hope that Del Monte Park can stay whole. But if not, well, teal was my second choice. So there you go. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Frank will respond, please.
I just want to mention that the numbers I read off are not on the table that's in the packet, because what I did is I calculated the percent difference so that we could understand the strength of voting one or the other, not just looking at the solid numbers. So what I read off was the percent difference, and I reported it as the percent strength. And the reason why I felt that was important is because the interest in the Lupin map that we heard mentioned they wanted to give strength to family votes and to minority votes. And in doing these calculations, we see that in order to do that, the teal map is the way to go, because it gives them the strongest vote.
Yeah, can I speak to that, Christy?
Of course you may.
Yeah, so I actually poured over the data points as well, and I decided not to bring them up in that manner, because literally the difference in the maps, for example, the citizen voting population from Lupine to teal, for example, non-Hispanic Black folks is one is 2% and the other is 3%. So I could say that's a 50% difference, or I could say, well, it's the difference between 2 and 3%. And the thing about these maps is these were made by a professional demographer. These are going to have, each of the 5 areas is going to be very similar from map to map to map, because that's what their job is to do. When it comes down to it, we have one map in front of us that has a clear community of interest in Del Monte Park, and that's the Lupine map. The other map, I don't know how you would define this neighborhood that's half Del Monte Park and then kind of half by the high school. It just is a strange kind of boundary that's got kind of a noodle-like shape. Del Monte Park is this rectangle over here. And so yeah, I think we need to be careful on this kind of data presentation that is sometimes 1 percentage point different, but it's being portrayed as a 50% difference.
Yeah, that's just a common way to present data, and data analysis is to look at the percent difference. It was oddly enough, as I was teaching my students this just this last week, so it was kind of fun to actually apply in a real world example what I was just teaching my students about the proper way to look at analytical data. So that's why I did that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other public comments? Emily Hickok, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Emily Hickok, and I'm a resident of Del Monte Park. And where I live, basically a couple of streets will be swallowed by a very large Pebble Beach district. I think there are very different demographic differences between the Pebble Beach district and the few streets of where I live. So I wanted to voice my support for the Lupine map, so we can keep the Del Monte Park neighborhood together. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, there's no more raised hands. Are there any other comments to go back to with the board? Okay, so we'll close public hearing now. And take action, yeah? Okay, that sounds good. All right, we are now closing public hearing, and as Dr. Porras alluded to earlier, we will go directly into resolution 1085, initiating a proposal to the Monterey County Committee on the School District Organization for the adoption of by trustee area elections. Okay, what do we need to do at this point?
So I think number one, would be a great time to make sure from our legal counsel that we're following the resolution appropriately. But the resolution is really asking for a couple of things here. It's
Okay,
asking, number one, that the board adopt a map. So you have a lupine or a teal map. And then to, after which, approve and adopt a sequencing. And it's written actually in the document, in the resolution itself, you'll see that page that asks for those data points to be approved. So,
Are these
Let's-
separate motions then too?
you know what, legally, I'm not sure if it needs to be. Thank you, Harold.
yeah, cover us legally, please.
Yeah, it's really up to the board as to how you want to do it. There's nothing wrong with doing it as a single motion. So a motion could be made to approve the resolution with X map and Y sequencing as a single motion. If that fails, you can then try a motion of approve the other map and approve a different sequencing, or you can break them out and take the vote in pieces. Either way is more convenient. If you had 3 or 4 maps that you were debating between tonight, the latter, breaking them apart, might make more sense. You only have 2 before you tonight. One of them only has 1 sequencing possibility on it. So certainly for efficiency, you may want to consider if there's support for 1 motion.
Okay, thank you for helping us with that.
Well, I'd like to move to approve the resolution with the teal map.
Second that.
Okay, the motion was made by trustee Brian Swanson and seconded by Dr. Frank Rivera for,
John Paff.
John.
oh, I'm sorry.
My doctorate's ABD.
It's
but thank
deep
you.
voices. I just missed you by, please, seconded by Mr. John Paff. So do we move forward with,
So you, as we usually do, you can take public comment
Okay.
before the vote, or you, which is kind of
it
usual.
might be
We've already had a
redundant,
public
but let's
hearing, but
do
you're
that.
welcome.
Yeah. Are there any additional public comment? We want to make sure we hear everybody. Valerie Anthony, please.
Hi, good evening. I just want to make sure that I think the numbers that have been presented by Dr. Rivera are important in this consideration, but I also think that, you know, one commenter said that she thought it was important to hear from someone in the Del Monte Park area. And I think it is important to understand that a lot of us, either in the room or on Zoom right now, don't live in the Del Monte Park area. And I don't want us to discount those voices, because the reality is maybe it shows that they may have a bigger voting, you know, percentage in the teal map. But the reality of the situation is when they get swallowed up, you know, like the resident of Del Monte Park said, by Pebble Beach, the reality is that does change a vote. And that is important. And those are things that we need to consider, because that is a part of Pacific Grove. So I just think that's important. It just seems, I just don't want that to be left behind when we consider this. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a couple more. Jenny McAdams, please.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and thank you for your service. And I appreciate watching this process as well. I am a resident of Del Monte Park, and it is disappointing to see in the teal map that Del Monte Park is broken up, especially when you move over to the Arkwright area and the higher density housing. That area specifically has a very low voting rate in every or voter turnout in just about all elections. If you look through the voter rolls over the last, 10 to 15 years. So you are really diluting that voice by breaking up this area. And Pebble Beach has a fantastic voter turnout for every single election. So, just consider that. Del Monte Park, we're an incredible neighborhood. We have kids and toys and scooters everywhere. We are really the working class of the city of Pacific Grove with the most diversity. So by breaking us up and sticking us with Pebble Beach, where you have multi-million-dollar houses, predominantly white, no diversity, I really hope that you'll reconsider supporting the teal map. And I know that you want to save your seats, and I know that you don't want to run against each other, but that's sort of the purpose of this process. And this is also for 10 years, which is a really long time. So, I appreciate the effort though. And if you did get a lot of public comment from Del Monte Park residents via email supporting the Lupin map, I hope that you listen to your constituents this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Molly, please. Molly, please.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
Sorry. Hi. I think that if providing representation in the community is going to be based more on the actual numbers of the voter turnout, that it would be better to choose the Lupin map. And I would encourage everyone to look at those numbers as well, just to make sure that we're making the right decision on that.
Thank you, Molly. Okay, there's no more public comment at this time. So we have a motion and a second, so we're ready to vote. Okay, let's do it. Yeah.
Trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Rivera,
Aye.
trustee Path,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson.
No.
The motion carries 4-1. We've adopted the teal map. And did we mention the sequencing in the motion?
There's only one.
There's only one, so we're happy. I just want that on record. Okay, so there's the one sequence and we will go with teal map.
Do we need to, I'm asking the attorney, do we need to mention that sequencing, or is it already just inherent in the vote for the teal? I just want to make sure we're covering the resolution.
Yeah, you're covered. That'll get filled in the resolution because there is only one option. There's no ambiguity on that.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Okay. See, that's A. All right, next we'll move on, please, to district update on response to COVID-19.
Pardon me, Madam President, just give me one moment to finish a thought while I'm taking the
You
notes
bet.
here.
Yeah, you're taking notes. You're doing everything, Dr. Porras.
I
Everything.
want to get it wrong.
There you go. 58.
Also, if I may, just before I start, I also want to thank, again, Harold and Jonathan, both of you very much for being with us this entire time, and Harold for that conversation that we had 3 years ago when this first came up about we got to be looking
Yes.
out for this. And so appreciate all the work that you've done with us to help the community. So thank you both.
Yes, it's been a very long road, and without your help, I don't know where we would be. It's so important to have that input and guidance along the way, so we do the best we can for our community and our schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Those notes down. Okay, very good. Thank you, Madam President. So in regards to COVID update, so obviously really have one big topic here to talk about this evening on this update. And I do have Nurse Powley, who's in the audience, and she may need to be added as a co-host when she, so she can jump in. So we do know that the governor and then through the California Department of Public Health issued basically has allowed the previous indoor mask ordinance to expire starting on March 11, which would then take effect for our students on the Monday, March 14. We sent this information out to all families. It's been posted on the website. We did everything we could to try to get that information out. At this stage of the game, what that effectively does is eliminates the requirements, the mandates for masks in our schools. However, in that order, the CDPH also included that they do, however, strongly recommend the use of masks in schools. But there's a clear distinction there, obviously. So at this point in time, all schools are moving forward with that directive. The county, Monterey County Department of Health has issued plenty of statements over the last 24 hours. Dr. Moreno has indicated that the department will follow suit with the CDPH in allowing this mandate to expire as well, and with the same recommendations. So that's where we are currently in regards to our next procession. As you recall, almost 2 years ago now, it's getting very close when COVID first hit. We have walked every step very carefully and did our very best to try to take into account the safety of our students, our families. But more importantly, we did everything we could to try to stay aligned with the health agencies that were issuing these mandates, as were all the other school districts in the county. So part of it was an alignment to try to follow safety countywide. It was also an acknowledgement that we were making our decisions based on the data that we were seeing for COVID cases, positivity rates, hospitalization, death rates, so on and so forth. And we knew that the experts were making the decisions around all of the ordinances based on the data that was before them. There's also an acknowledgement that Monterey County is a very large county. And what happens on one end of the county may not necessarily reflect the same data that happens in another. And so there were times along the way where the numbers of positivity rates, for example, in Salinas differed greatly from what we were seeing in Pacific Grove. And however, we still continued to follow whatever the ordinance was countywide, again, to try to make sure that we were following all of the regulations set forward. So at this stage of the game, in regards to what we are seeing with this expiration of the mandate, local agencies are still allowed to make a different decision if you wish. So the board is a local jurisdiction and could decide to do something different than what the ordinance indicates. Also want to make sure that everyone in the audience understands that we have been thinking about this. This has been something we've been thinking about for 2 years.
Yeah.
We knew this time was going to come at some stage of the game. We've been watching, trying to figure out how to react and respond, but ultimately we had to wait a bit because we just weren't sure what the specific information guidance would be. So all that being said, we are continuing to follow all the other mitigation protocols that we have in place, from analyzing and looking at airflow in our classrooms, to the hand washing stations, to the hand sanitization, to the open doorways for airflow, to the testing protocols that we've put into place for when there are close contacts. All of those other mitigations that are listed in our COVID safety plan are still going to be in place. The difference would be that the mask would no longer be required, only highly recommended. So any other effect that we would need to note around this that's in the COVID safety plan, we would make sure to make an adjustment for. And I think we'll be looking at that carefully once we get the actual release from the county health department. We haven't gotten the, on letterhead, here it is, release. We should be getting that soon. I do want to make a note that as we have done for the last 2 years, we've been having conversations with all of the school districts in the county to try to get an idea of sort of where everyone is, with the understanding, again, that different areas of the county affected differently. At this stage of the game, we're not seeing any major deviation away from what the orders are asking of us. Doesn't mean that we have to follow what everyone does, but just I've been reporting that all along the way. So just for consistency's sake, to let you know that that's how we're proceeding. So I think, I don't know if Nurse Pally is on now. Okay. I know that she has done some work. I guess I'll I'll preempt her just a little bit while she's getting on. I did ask her to take a look as best as she could over the county health department put up a new web page, a new database. And their intent was to try to help all of us in the communities take a closer look at the breakdown of the data by zip code. And so they have done that, and Nurse Pally took a look at that. And actually the CDC just barely, right after this meeting started, the CDC just updated their website to show that our area now is in a low risk area. It was in moderate or medium before, like 3 hours ago. So then an hour and a half ago, CDC just changed it to reflect the low risk area. And Nurse Pally did take a look at the data that is around us, and we are indeed in a low community level based on the positivity percentages. The total COVID-19 cases within our Pacific Grove population of 15,000 and some change is 44. That's within the last 30 days. The positivity percentage is 4.33. And so essentially the cases have dropped, the positivity has dropped into a place where we're considered low risk. We also did take a look at the numbers within Pacific Grove and just in terms of current cases. And I also asked for patience, the folks that have been looking at the dashboard. The break kind of intruded a little bit there, so we lost track of some of the timing. However, the dashboard has been made up to date as of this point. And as of today, I believe that we do have 3 resolved cases at Forest Grove Community High School and Pacific Grove High School, and 1 new case at the high school. That was this evening, and we're updating that. So essentially, we have 3 positive cases right now at the high school, 3 positive cases at Forest Grove, and that's it district-wide. As of today, it was reported that the pool testing that we have received back from all have come out negative. So I think one interpretation of that could be that we're actually doing well in maintaining a safe environment around us, and that the cases have dropped pretty significantly. So with that delay, any other, okay. What is that what they do, right? String it out. So anyway, I want to pass it along to Nurse Pally so that she can add to this. Thank you, Katrina.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ralph. So I just joined the meeting. I'm grateful to be here and just to answer any questions you have about the new guidance that's going to be in place starting March 12th. And so one of the things to keep in mind with the lifting of the mask mandate is that the CDPH still strongly recommends the use of masks indoors. So our providing masks for students and staff is not going to discontinue. We're going to continue to provide the masking that staff requests, the KN95s, as well as the surgical masks for staff and students. So we'll continue to provide all the PPE that we've been providing before. We have, and that's also including hand sanitizer, wipes, gloves, those kinds of things. So that won't change. So we do strongly recommend, as per following the CDPH, that people do wear masks indoors, but the mandate, the difference from what we have seen before is that the mandate has been lifted. So it is optional, even though we do strongly recommend. So we will follow what the CDPH states as of now, until we hear more from our county, if there's a departure from that guideline. Anything else? Any other questions you have, or?
Well, we'll go around and check, and thank you for the update. We're glad you were able to get on.
Sure.
Ralph was getting kind of winded, so you rescued him as well. All right, we'll go ahead and start. Trustee Carolyn Swanson, questions or comments?
Yeah, I have some questions, but I'm really thinking what might be best is my questions are coming from parents who have asked me. And I feel like we're at this kind of scary spot in the pandemic for folks who are passionate about keeping masks and folks who are passionate about not keeping them. And I'm wondering what we can offer as a district to have the families feel heard, and then as a board, we can go from there instead of us just saying, well, the state and the county have said this, because I do want to acknowledge that the state has said that this can be a board decision to create stricter guidelines, to perhaps create a kind of a system where we know if we're going to trigger the masks coming back on campus. There's so many questions right now and unrest in our community surrounding this decision that I would love to hear ideas from the staff on how we can address that and help our community be more comfortable with this and also feel heard.
Okay, well, we're going to get board comments, and then of course we want to hear from staff as well and community. All right, John Paff.
I have no comments, thanks.
Okay.
No, I'm take that back. I have one comment.
Okay.
Nurse Pally, thank you for the yeoman's work that you have pulled through this entire thing coming up to this date and for getting this data today. I know particularly January was just well, you know, I mean, there was a big spike and lots of additional things. And I really not one to drag on there, but thank you so much for keeping us up and keeping as many people as you can moving in a positive direction there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nurse Pally. You've been doing a tremendous amount of work this whole time. And I have to admit, I am one of those people who are nervous about making this transition, but I'm going to be nervous no matter what, no matter when we do this. Those numbers that were just reported out today eased that anxiety a little bit. Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that.
Thank you.
Again, my appreciation for everything that you've done over the last, 2 years, right?
Yeah.
I have a daughter who's immune compromised, and so I'm, like Dr. Rivera, I'm a little nervous, but I'm going to wear my mask when I go to places where I feel a little, just a little nervous again. It's like, I hit the gym, I wear my mask at the gym. It's in a room full of people that have not been wearing their masks, even when they're supposed to be wearing their masks. So it's like, there are things that we're still able to do individually to protect ourselves. And I think that's one thing I just want to remind everybody about, that it's not, nobody's banning masks. It's an option, it's encouraged, but for those people that no longer want to, they don't have to. That's all.
Okay, thank you so much. I would concur. I think 2 years is a long time. And as we move through this, I remember people in the beginning talking about it'll just be a couple of weeks. We'll all be back a couple of weeks as we hit the 2-year mark. I feel that we have followed along the whole way based on recommendations from the county and the state. The letters we received as a board and with families that I think every family's concerned, obviously, on certain levels, but I think some have more issues with younger children or grandparents or immunocompromised kids. So I'm very aware of that. I'm very empathetic. The good thing is, I'm going to reiterate, you can still wear your mask. And I think a lot of classrooms will find that kids will wear their masks, and hopefully that gives them more comfort. So I look forward to hearing from staff now too, and community members. So let's open it up, please, for those comments. Emily Hickok, please.
Hello, my name is Emily Hickok. My son Gavin is 5 years old and it goes to kindergarten at Forest Grove. He's in Miss Fatum's wonderful class. We've been so happy with his experience there, even despite COVID. But I wanted to speak to you today and address you because we also have a 3-year-old daughter who is not eligible to be vaccinated yet. And just this week, we learned that even my 5-year-old, who is fully vaccinated and has done everything we've asked him to do to keep our family safe and himself safe, we learned that even though he's fully vaccinated, he's only 12% protected against infection. So if he is in a classroom where another student, unbeknownst to them, has an asymptomatic infection, and that student chooses not to wear a mask, he's going to be put at risk. Just last month in my son's class, through the pooled testing program, which I'm a huge proponent of and so thankful for, there was on a Wednesday, they did the pooled testing. It wasn't until Saturday we got the results that 2 students had asymptomatic infections. Had that been the case, and had those students not been wearing masks, everyone in that class would have been exposed to those students for 3 days. We know the science, right? 2 years into this, we're all fatigued, but 2 years into this, we know this virus is spread through the air, through aerosolized particles from people that are breathing in enclosed environments. And we know, we've all seen the diagrams of masking is most effective when the infected person wears the mask, number one, and then when other people around them wears the mask. And, you know, the state, it's so frustrating because the state has said that they strongly recommend wearing masks. And they've said that each school district should feel empowered to pass requirements to continue doing that. And so I hope, you know, we're so lucky. We live in an area where we have very high vaccination rates. We've had a lot of compliance with masking requirements. And at this time, before every single person, including my 3-year-old, is eligible to be vaccinated, I, from the bottom of my heart, hope that you will contemplate continuing requiring masking until, you know, everyone is able to be vaccinated, until we have better data on the 5 to 11-year-olds and whether or not another shot will provide them additional protection. You know, it's very, very frustrating that the state took this step on such a short turnaround time, and that they're saying they strongly recommend wearing masks, yet they're not going to require it. So again, in closing, I just wanted to share that I am so thankful for the board and the school district and every mitigation measure you have taken. I felt through this whole process, you've done everything in your power to protect our kids, to keep our teachers safe. You've taken every safety mitigation, and I have felt so deeply appreciative and thankful of all those steps, because we know it's very different in other parts of the state and in other parts of the country. And I think we're at a crossroads now where if we just hang on a little longer, we can continue to protect our kids and our teachers and the staff. And before every person is eligible to be vaccinated, before we have better data on the 5 to 11-year-olds, it's just too soon. And I'm hoping you will feel empowered to, you know, pass a requirement so we can keep everyone protected. I certainly don't want to roll the dice with my daughter's health. We have heard that there can be terrible consequences. You know, even if you don't end up in the hospital, there's increases in diabetes risk, in multi-system inflammatory disorder. We just don't know the long-term risks. So if you would continue, oh, we have my 3-year-old joining us actually. So I won't take up any more of your time. I appreciate it, but please consider continuing the mandate until everyone's able to be vaccinated.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you for sharing your daughter with us for a moment there. All right, next hand, please. Christina Luciano, please.
Good evening, board and members of the community. I wanted to start with a quote from one of my students. One of my students said to me the other day when we were learning about Martin Luther King Jr., "Imagine if all the people who fought for all of these changes gave up." She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "I promise, Mrs. Luciano, I will always fight for what is right for those in need." That's why I'm here tonight. I'm here addressing you not only as a very concerned teacher of PGUSD, but as a parent of a child within the district and a high-risk child under 5 at home. As a teacher working in the classroom each day, I see the very real risk that COVID poses in our schools. In the 36 days since our return in January, I've had 3 positive COVID cases in my classroom. 3 times when a COVID positive child came to school for the majority of the day and exposed the other 20 children and myself. Due to the current mitigation procedures, we did not have any other cases arise as a result of these exposures. I truly believe this is because my students are very vigilant mask wearers. The idea that this very important and effective protection will now become optional is incredibly concerning. Removing this layer of protection now, when there are a lot of members of the community who are still not eligible to be vaccinated, and at risk seems very negligent and premature. Given that children under 5 are not yet eligible and vaccine rates among our school-age children in the county are relatively low at 39%, this mitigation element is still essential. I would urge the board to take a stand like other California districts such as San Diego Unified and San Francisco Unified District to keep all students, staff, teachers, and their families safe. My job and my child's ability to go to school should not put my other high-risk child's health in jeopardy. I hope that everyone can take a step back and think of masks as a protection for those who continue to be vulnerable rather than a restriction. The idea that wearing a mask in school is too much of a sacrifice boggles my mind. When did it become too much to do the right thing to help protect others? When did it become too important to see smiles, but not important enough to protect those who are susceptible to COVID? When did doing something for the common good become too much? What lessons does our board and our superintendent want to teach our children? Do we want to instill in them that we should follow the golden rule and act for the good of others? Do we want to encourage them to be upstanders in our community, to help and protect those in need? Do we want to follow our district mission, focusing on equity and providing a safe environment? Or rather, do we want to tell them that someone's personal desire is more important than the common good? Do we want to show them that we don't have to include everyone if it's not convenient? If we truly worry about inclusion and equity, which I hope we do, we would be doing what needs to be done in order to include all students equitably. We can't claim to value inclusion and equity in one breath while failing to advocate for the vulnerable and creating division with the next. I will not stop fighting for the safety of my colleagues, my family, my students, and myself, because I made a pledge to my students to be an upstander, and I wholeheartedly believe in standing up for others. So I ask the board tonight, will you fight for the greater good? Will you be an upstander? Will you protect those who are vulnerable? What message or values do we want to teach our students? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Luciano. There were two other. Okay. Okay, so at this time, we're not seeing any other hands? Okay, they put their hands down. All right, thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so we've had public comment and we would now entertain a motion. We don't take action?
At this point, forgive me, at this point, there is no direct action to take unless the board wants to pursue a different course than the directives from the state and the health department. So at this stage, again, as was commented by a few folks and mentioned earlier, the state does allow the board to make other more restrictive guidelines or mandates for the district. If the board chooses to, you may certainly do so. Again, I want to point out the implementation of the new guideline is physically March 14. So we still have a week away. So in regards to any direction the board would like to take, certainly tonight is fine, or at a time between now and whenever you'd like to do so. It doesn't have to necessarily be tonight, but it's up to you.
Yeah, I'm looking for if anybody has an opinion other than that we move forward now.
I haven't heard from any board member yet to propose any kind of a motion or anything like that. We can go around and just check, but mine would be, I've got nothing at the moment.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll be moving on to resolution 1082, authorizing the use of remote teleconferencing provisions.
Christy?
Yes.
I had mentioned at the beginning of this topic to try to come up with have staff come up with some ideas on how we can really reach out to our district and have them feel heard in some sort of manner, and not necessarily a committee, but some sort of way for us to hear from students and staff. I feel like there may be a solution out there, like perhaps if we have a certain amount of staff who feel that they're high risk, maybe they want to do part distance learning. I know it sounds crazy, and we have certain kids who perhaps want to participate in distance learning. I don't know, but I feel like there may be a solution out there that helps folks who have vulnerable folks at home or folks who aren't able to get vaccinated yet, kind of find some sort of common ground to kind of ease into this transition. So I would like to hear more about that. Perhaps it's even as simple as sending out a survey to families and hearing, because what if we have 98% of our district who wants to keep masking? Perhaps then we listen to our community and we continue masking.
Also know that if they want to continue masking, they certainly can. Correct?
Yes.
I mean, I think that's, I mean, I just heard from both our superintendent and Nurse Powley, who's done an exceptional job. I would not envision that everybody's going to rip their mask off immediately. I think many students and educators will choose to keep it on. But at this point, I mean, we're where we are today. So I think your idea, I certainly get it. And perhaps a few months ago in anticipation, we would have had time to go out there. But what we're talking about is decisions being made that will feel within the next, you know, on the 12th.
Sure. And that's why, you know, I don't think that there's maybe a ton that we can do, but I do think that we've got some other factors here. We all know that masks have been a huge help in mitigating the spread of COVID. We know that the spread of COVID happens indoors, unmasked, which is why we have a surge after holidays. And now we're going to be having that in our schools. We're a small district that, as a board, you know, we're reading about all these folks coming in across the country against masks. We haven't had that in our district. It's very, very possible that we have a district that wants to continue masking and feel like everyone is in the same boat. So there isn't a discrepancy and there aren't kids you're feeling like they have to explain why they have a mask on. And so that I'll leave it at that. I would like to hear more options on how perhaps we can help transition our district into getting rid of the masks or reducing the mandate. I would like to hear more on that if possible.
I don't understand what you mean by reducing the mandate. And again, and we've said this countless times now this evening, nobody is being required to remove their mask. And I also think that if there was a grand concern about what was happening, we would have had more than a few public comments. And further to that, it's like we are listening. We do listen. We read the letters. We listen to the public comment. That strikes me as odd that it feels to a degree like you're trying to find a problem that might not exist.
Well, and like I said, perhaps the folks who have reached out to me or the folks who have written, and maybe they're in the minority, but I just think because we do have this rare opportunity to perhaps serve our exact district in a way that we haven't really had during this pandemic. You know, the state has left it open. And so why wouldn't we want to explore more? And I'm sorry if my words were confusing about reducing a mandate. I can tell why, I understand why that was confusing. I would just like to give families more of an opportunity for input for something like this. This isn't a decision that's listed on our agenda. Our agenda tonight is district update on response to COVID. So this is just a time where we're not taking action on this mandate, but we could give direction to staff to further discuss or come back with recommendations.
Okay, we have some hands up at this time. There are 6 hands of people wishing to speak. So maybe you'll hear some things now. Erica?
Hi, I'm Erica Chavez, and I'm a teacher and a parent of students. But my big concern is, I guess I'm just looking for direction because I put my hand down because I was waiting to see if you were going to take a different step and then you didn't. I would just like for leadership to be really clear to the parents to discuss with the children what their family policies are going to be, because in a classroom with kindergartners and who are 5 and 6, they're going to come to me and say, why do I have to? Why doesn't she have to? Why is she not? And I don't want to be put in the position to speak for the parents or to rationalize for the parents. And I do want to honor what the parents want for their children. So if I'm supposed to remind, 6 kids to pull up their masks and wear them properly, I need to know which 6 kids those are, or which 20 kids those are. But that parents really feel free to communicate with their child's teacher what their preferences are going to be, because I can only support the parents if they're open with me and they communicate with me. But I also don't want to be put into the position of translating for a parent to a 5 or a 6-year-old. So I really think that if Dr. Porras or the school administrators could come out, I know it's different for a high schooler because they're gonna make their decision, but a 5 or 6-year-old, I mean, I go through 6 disposable masks a day because they chew on the string and they forget and they're losing it. So these little guys really, really need direction from their parents as to what their expectations are going to be all day, because I don't want somebody to come back to me because I've dropped the ball when I was supposed to remind them to wear it. And I didn't know they were a mask wearing family because I didn't get that memo and things. So I just think we need I personally, as a kindergarten teacher, need very, very clear requirements from the families in my care on who's doing what and how I can best support them.
I think that's an excellent point, and it speaks to site-specific and age-specific. As you're mentioning, TK is going to be very different from an 11th grader. So I think those are things that principals and staff and everybody can have discussions on. And I think that's what Carolyn's alluding to partially, is just more discussion within the groups to do the best possible thing. 5 more hands, please. Next. Amy Ramos, please.
I would like to say the same. I think it's very important that each grade level or each site determine what is best for their school. And I would like to see the board come together and assist in making that decision. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Tanya, please.
Hi, I'm Tanya Fadem, kindergarten teacher at Forest Grove. I want to echo what's being said, particularly for our age group. We've worked really hard to create like a classroom community, and this some kids will be wearing masks and some kids won't be wearing masks. It's going to be really hard to explain. And I also have several students who have a high level of anxiety about people when their masks are down. And I'm just really worried about how that's going to translate for them. Now they're going to have to be in a classroom where a portion of students will be unmasked. And I'm just, as a classroom has recently had 8 cases in our classroom, that it's really scary to kind of think about how to navigate it for those younger students. So just kind of echoing what's previously been said by Ms. Chavez.
I think those are excellent points. Thank you, Tanya.
Yes.
Elliot, please. Elliot?
Hi, sorry, it took a second to be turned on there. Thank you very much. I really wanted to echo the points that both Mrs. Ciano and Trustee Carolyn Swanson made, that I think at least coming to the community with, whether it's a questionnaire, a survey, if there are going to be a lot of people that are made to feel unsafe by this at no fault of anyone in this room or broader. And I think as a community, it would be important to make sure we are being as open and listening as strongly as possible to that. And I'm very fortunate that both of my kids have been able to be vaccinated, but the reason I do choose to wear a mask when I do is for those folks that don't have that choice. So I'm not suggesting that the mandate must be kept in place, but the site-specific approach and making sure the community has a voice seems very important to me in this process. So thank you.
Very well said. Thank you. Jennifer McNary, please. Jen McNary.
I apologize, I was muted.
No worries.
2 years in and it still happens. I just wanted to echo the comments of Trustee Carolyn and Dr. Hazen and Ms. Luciano. I think it would be really valuable to seek out the community's input rather than expect us to come to all of these board meetings and provide it here. It's not reasonable. If we can meet the community where we're at, like send an email with the survey, gather the input, that I think could be really valuable for everyone to feel heard and also for you all to have information about what people are thinking right now about masks. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleen, please.
Hey, I'm Kylene Brousseau, and I'm actually in Carmel, live in Carmel Unified, but my son is sent to PG, and I was a former PG teacher, and he's in the SDC program. And I just feel that it should be the parent's choice, and it's the parent's choice to vaccinate or not vaccinate their children. But I know is having a parent, being a parent of a child with special needs who struggles with pragmatics, not being able to see people's expressions is extremely difficult. And so for him to be able to engage with other people, he needs to be able to see people's faces. So I believe that it should be left to the choice of the parent and the family. And again, I feel like nobody is saying that everybody has to unmask. If the teacher feels comfortable with unmasking, then so be it. If the teacher wants to remain masked, so be it. But I know for me and for my family and what is best for my son is for him to be able to see people's faces so that way he can properly engage with them. So that I just wish that it could be left to the family and the individual and be their choice. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Jenny McAdams, please.
Good evening, everybody. And thank you again for your service, and especially during the pandemic. I know that there is no handbook for how to maneuver these difficult issues. I have a student at PG High School, and I also have a student at International School Monterey. And ISM did send out a parent survey, and the community as a school, we are keeping masks on. And that was an overwhelming response. So, however, though, the students will be able to remove their masks outdoors, which is something new starting next week. So I think there is a way to be cautious and still, let the kids, that was something that came up in the survey, is to give the kids an opportunity to adjust to not having their masks on, because their faces have been covered for a really, really long time. And I know, especially for my son, he has, he's having anxiety too. So I think with transitioning to having the choice of having your mask off when you're outside is great, and it'll get kids sort of used to that. But I definitely agree with some of the comments about, how are you going to mitigate if, one kid has a mask and one doesn't? And I think it especially with younger children, needs to be consistent. So they're already confused and have been experiencing a pandemic. And, I think staying with being consistent will help with this transition. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for sharing. Shannon Mccarty, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to say maybe there is, I understand from a parent's perspective, the right to decide for your own child. I think it's hard as a teacher to, we feel responsible for all the children in our classroom. And so because one parent wants to decide not to wear a mask, it's unfortunate for all those other kids that their parents want them to wear a mask. So could there be something that maybe the school district puts out at each school site that says, like, masks are not required, but strongly recommended, so that it seems that you know, parents are aware that, I mean, it's kind of goofy that the governor said that kind of a not required, but strongly recommended, because now we're acting like he just said everyone shouldn't wear their mask. Well, that's not really what it was saying. I mean, strongly recommended, if I saw that when I was choosing to decide whether or not to do something, I would go, oh, strongly recommended means I need to do that. It just means I'm not required. So is there something that we can put out at school sites to say masks are strongly recommended, because we still have all these things that, you know, immune compromised children, or children who can't get their shots yet, or teachers who are immunocompromised, so that we're protecting the whole group. I mean, I understand if some parents will still choose not to require a mask, but I think that we need to, as a district, show that we are strongly recommending that students are still wearing masks, as the governor stated.
Good point. Thank you so much, Shannon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no more raised hands at this point, and I think there were some very good points that came up, and some of what we heard was site specific, which is obviously handling these things at the different levels will be treated differently. All right. That didn't make any sense to you, Ralph?
If I may, just from,
okay, please
from just-
you go ahead and sum up.
just so because I'm hearing, I'm a little variations of what I'm hearing, and I just want to be super clear what direction the board would like us to proceed. In regards to what Ms. McCarty said, absolutely, we're already trying to figure out what kind of signage we can make, so we can make it very clear. Again, wanted to be very clear what the county health department is telling us first before we do anything. So that's absolutely doable. I just want to be clear what the ask is around site specific and different rules, because I'm not sure what that request is. And so if you can clarify, that would be great. You mean you want each site to host sort of a Q&A for parents to get
No,
some
that's
feedback?
not what I meant.
I just kind of want to get, so my
it-
principals know what we need to do.
Okay, I was thinking back to what Erica Chavez meant, that a teacher in certain classrooms would want to have communication direct with parents knowing. I think that makes sense. I mean, I would think a 3-year-old, there might be that kind of communication.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
I'm not saying, 10th grader versus 11th versus 12th. Now, as far as sending things out to families, I think it's nice to hear from people, but I still am in the same spot that what we're hearing is it's strongly recommended. I think I'm hoping most people continue to mask, but if someone opts not to, that the rules have changed now.
Okay. I think I got it.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, and I would just like to add, if I may, President Dawson, is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so just in this couple minutes of discussion, I just found it really valuable, because it's Ms. Chavez, thank you for that, for giving us a kind of a window into the nuts and bolts of the classroom.
Sure.
And maybe and of course the teachers would tell you what they need, but it almost sounds like we want like a permission slip or some sort of way to know like where the families are coming from. I also heard that signage is recommended, so hopefully, I'm sure Ralph, you're taking notes on that, yeah, as the board member, and I don't know if the rest of the board agrees they would need to, but I would be in favor of increasing our signage that says strongly recommended, and then perhaps even working with our counselors and sending out information to all of our families for children on ways to address what they call mask bullying, because now that's a thing. So those are the things that I heard tonight. Also that some parents want to have parent choice, which I totally understand. And then the other thing was perhaps a survey was another idea. So those are the things that I heard. Board, it would be up to us as a collective, right, to give direction to Ralph on which one of these we wanted to follow up on. All of them, one of them, none of them.
Ralph, you've already committed to signage saying strongly recommended. I heard
Yes.
that earlier, so that's not new. Whether or not sites ask for some sort of permission, I think that that puts us in a very tenuous position. I do not think Ms. Chavez should actually be the proctor for that under any circumstances. Erica, if you're still online, I'm using you as example,
No,
not,
agree completely,
not
yeah.
there. I think that we don't want to go there. The dilemma, you know, we have followed the guidelines that have been presented to us for 2 years, and this involved the first 100 hate mail that I got 2 years ago saying, how can I possibly wear this? There are plenty of people who have said, hey, thank you very much. We're happy to have no masks. And following the guidelines that have been presented to me, I mean, we should say, yes, it's strongly recommended at this point. We're now at a caseload that's dropping six per 100,000 every other day. There has to be an out, and we're here. We need to make that. And yes, it might be hard, but it's a time. So thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to move forward now to resolution 1082, authorizing the use of remote teleconferencing provisions. Okay.
This is Madam President, this item has been brought to the board a few times, and I was asked to bring it back for discussion by the board. And so we're recommending that you do continue this discussion as you see fit, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Comments on this, Mr. Swanson?
Well, I've been in favor of it, just because it makes things a little bit easier to conduct meetings if you're having to be remote, whether it's that you want to feel safer about your environment, or, I mean, I've used it. I think about, and maybe we did them wrong previously, but you know, I'm back in Minnesota dealing with my aged parents and don't want to miss a meeting. You know, I've done meetings from hotel rooms in New York City and my parents' basement in Minnesota, and I just think it makes things a little bit easier. So I continue to be in favor of trying to pass it.
Okay. Dr. Rivera?
Yes, I think we all, well, I'm only going to speak for myself. So I feel the same. I went back and I looked at this with a fresh pair of eyes, like I think that we all have the responsibility to do. And I went back and I looked into the Brown Act and how it's this weird thing that if you're going to teleconference, that you have to post the agenda, and then you have to allow strangers to come into your house. I'm like, there's so many things about the Brown Act that I'm like, this guy was nuts. And then I see, oh, okay. And 3 times this year that I felt like, oh, okay, was the very first meeting we had this year. That was powerful, the community members there. And then twice when the teachers showed up and we walked through and we actually had to face them and talk with them and hear their grievances. And there's been some discussion. You can go online and look at discussion about this part of the Brown Act, and face-to-face testimony comes up time and again and how important it is. And I believe that because I've, you know, it was mentioned about the expulsions. I've had a look at a child, you know, sitting in here shaking, and I had to look at him and look at them and make a decision. And you really cannot feel the weight of this office until you have to do something like that, and it's on your shoulders and you're right in front of them. And I think that I needed to feel that. As difficult as it was, it made a powerful impact on me. And then that's what made me realize the importance of face-to-face testimony. Now we're in this pandemic, so we're given this pass. You know, should we take it? We're just about to tell our teachers and our students that masks are optional. So I feel kind of uncomfortable saying that you guys were gonna masks are optionals, but now we're gonna take stricter regulations to protect us sitting up here. It just doesn't feel right. I wish I could disconnect the two. I mean, I want, if there's one thing, excuse me, I'm fumbling over my words, if there's one thing that we've all learned in these past 2 years is empathy and compassion. I hope we have learned that. And we should be considerate of other people's level of comfort or lack thereof. And I want Trustee Swanson and Trustee Swanson to be able to sit in their homes if they prefer, without having strangers being able to come up there. You know, that I would love that for any of you guys. You know, I don't want to push my sense of duty on anyone else, but I can't separate that with what we're asking the teachers to do right now. And that's why, you know, you know, whether I need to or not, I'm going to apologize to my colleagues, but I have to vote no on this because of that, because what we're asking our teachers to do and our students.
Frank said that better than I can say that, and I should leave it at that. There was a point in 2000, I want to say 17, where we had to take a vote, and my initial principle was to vote against it, and it turned out it would have cost us about $250,000 to vote against it, and I have to some extent regretted that vote. And that was to, at one point, you know, we talked about voters and trying to work within the you know, as officials, and we basically gave everybody who was on the board an extra year, because the cost of a special election would have been borne only by PGUSD instead of being distributed. This is exactly what Frank said. You know, I'm asking other people to come in. This benefits 5 trustees as best I can tell. We're already broadcasting. It allows us to broadcast, but we already do that. It allows people to interact via teleconference. It allows us to do that. And actually the restriction in the Board Act isn't horrible anyway. So I'm in the same position I was earlier.
Well, I came until a couple of days ago intending to vote yes on this, because I thought it's kind of too big a deal. Let's just not even have it be a deal. Let's just vote for it, and in 30 days we can talk again. The change for me was the mask mandate change. To hear teachers, you know, on the verge of tears and concern about their livelihood, what they go home for. I do feel what you said is accurate. I can't support it. Again, tonight I have to vote no. I just feel like we should not be special. We should be here and we should do what we ask our teachers to do and show up. So that's me. Carolyn Swanson, please.
Yeah, thanks, Christy. I mean, I can count. There's 3 against it, so I don't even know how much more comments I really need to make.
Okay.
I just want to add, because I'm not going to make a motion and do that, but the reason I support it again is try to make it easier. It's like when I'm phoning in from Austin, Texas or New York, because I have a job that requires me to travel. So trying to make it a little bit easier so I can still participate. I'm not trying to make it easy so that I can go from home. It's like, I want to do it so that I can go from wherever I am and still do my job. So, but I'm not going to make a motion. So just, I wanted to be clear about that though.
Thank you. Okay, time to move on. D, resolution number 1080. Oops, public comment. Sorry. Margaret, don't take it personally. I'm so sorry. I get so excited.
Okay, I'll be nervous.
Okay.
So good evening. My name is Margaret Rice.
Microphone, please.
A little button there on the side.
Down on the
right in
side,
front.
green.
There you go.
Clearly my first time making a public comment.
You're
I
doing great.
usually
You're doing great.
listen. So my name is Margaret Rice and I'm a school counselor at Pacific Grove High School. And I was moved to make a public comment this evening regarding resolution 1082 after listening to the discussion regarding this issue at the January 2022 board meeting. Much of that meeting was focused on the perception of the resolution. Was the resolution and the purpose of the resolution misinterpreted or misrepresented? And the question was asked, would the teachers, our educational staff, want our board to follow the letter of the law. And any of you who know me, who've worked with me, know that I'm all about the rules and doing things right. So after repeated readings of Resolution 1082 and AB 361, I'm still struggling to identify how our PGUSD current circumstances meet the requirements to adopt this resolution. While we may temporarily be in a state of emergency, according to covid19.ca.gov, there are no county tiers, no capacity limits, and no physical distancing requirements at this time. Additionally, item B and C of this resolution require that meeting in person would present imminent risk to the health and safety of the attendees. And to be frank, these board meetings are the safest thing that I do in my schedule. We meet in a large room with open doors and windows with adults who are masked. So if the intent of this resolution is to be ready in case of a full-blown emergency shutdown, then I value being prepared. However, the examples provided at the last meeting led me to believe that the board would like these provisions to conduct meetings now virtually due to safety concerns. So that begs the question, how are we as a district defining and then acting regarding COVID risk and safety for our students, our staff, and our community? So after weeks of thought about this issue, I see the main downside to passing this resolution is inconsistent practice and/or policy regarding the health and safety of our community based on our district roles. As we move forward in this ever-changing new normal, I would respectfully request that our decision-making regarding safety, COVID risks, and expectations for all district members be made uniformly regardless of our employee sites. I appreciate the opportunity to contribute to the discussion regarding this resolution and all of your service and time on the board.
Thank you so much, Margaret. Any other public comments? Elliot Hazen, and then we'll hear from Beth Shamas, please.
Again, apologies, board, that you have to hear from me again, but I did want to say, in the following on, I really appreciated the previous comments, but my one concern here is if we're trying to do better with equity, we want to make sure that we have representation from people that may have, children at home that at risk that would not be comfortable with an in-person board meeting. Do we want those folks to run for office? And if so, I think we need to think more broadly than just the folks sitting in the room today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Beth?
Beth Shamas. Yeah, I don't understand the equating of this particular resolution with trying to be on the same par with what is required of the teachers. This is just an emergency to allow for, you could do a virtual meeting, but I mean, it's just eliminating that one requirement. I mean, I don't get the comparison. I really don't. I think, it's reasonable and it's short term.
Thank you for sharing. Emily Hickok, please.
Hello, I just wanted to provide feedback that virtual meetings are so convenient and enhances participation. And just from joining the meeting today, I would say, having someone like Trustee Carolyn Swanson join remotely, I've actually been able to see her more up close, been able to watch her speak, and it's been much more effective than from the distance cameras where I can't see any of the other trustees speak. So from a participation and feeling included perspective, I think the virtual meetings are wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Valerie Anthony, please.
Hi, I just want to kind of echo what I've already heard from other commenters. I understand the importance of, being in line with what, we're asking teachers to do. I really do think that matters. So I appreciate that being brought to the table. But at the same time, the reality is, we just spoke about our concerns about masks coming off or staying on. And that is the reality, is that we are still living in a pandemic. And I do think that we have to remember that and give people who need to take other routes for whatever reasons or health reasons, until things do get maybe to another normal. I do think that we just need to consider that. And I agree with the previous commenter. While it is important to be aligned with teachers, it's not really the same thing. And I think I do appreciate being able to see everyone up front. It does do something more when we can't meet in person. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is she here? Okay, so at this time, are there any more hands? Okay, no more public comment at this time. And there's no motion. Okay, so next we'll move on to resolution number 1086, issuance of tax and revenue anticipation note, TRAN, not to exceed, is that 7 million?
Not to exceed 7.5.
7.5. I was getting to the half. 7 over. Whew, okay.
Thank you, President Dawson. This is just a normal, the routine process, because we basically school district, we receive our property tax dollars the bulk of that in December and in April. So this is temporary borrowing to tie us over anytime between September and November. And every year could be slightly different. This year, because of COVID money, there's cash. Doesn't mean that it is our money, but we can spend the cash in a general fund until we get the tax receipts. It's just up to us. It's an authorization to up to 7.5 million, so that we can get in the pool with CSBA. The interest cost is as listed in the fiscal impact. And just open for any questions.
Okay, do you have a question at this time?
We see this every year, right?
That's
Just
correct.
like tonight. So nope, but thank you.
All right. Trustee Carolyn Swanson?
No, this is pretty routine. Actually, a song or Ralph, is this something that could go on consent next time?
Well, it's a lot of money. And so in the past,
That's a good point.
The board has asked us to put items of this significance onto action. I mean, if the board would like, we certainly can put these on consent later, but I think just based on the value, it probably is a better idea. Good question, though. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we should have a rule, anything over
7 million.
That's right. It's such a big number, but we can be quick about it because it is routine, and thank you for bringing that.
Yeah, I don't have any other questions.
Okay, perfect.
Just a comment. This is, I was shocked when I saw this, and it sounds like it's a normal thing that happens. That question was answered. Dave Ramsey has this idea that if you're going to buy a house, or you're going to have to replace your roof in 10 years, you should start stocking away. I just envision a time when this is not necessary because we're able to stock away. That's all.
Good, positive attitude.
David Ramsey does not run a district.
Yeah.
Period. He runs a radio station, and while he's an interesting guy, they are not the same. The TRAN is straightforward. I mean, it simply says that you get taxes twice a year. You don't get them it's not like a business where you have a recurring income. It's very straightforward. So.
Okay. So that's that. Public comment. Okay, the number's so big. Okay, no public comment at this time. Is there any action needed? Yes.
Yes.
I do. I'm sorry. I have one other question. Song, is our rate on the Tran gone up this year?
Slightly, but not much.
Not much.
Right.
Is there an expectation that this is going to increase? I mean, right now, our bonds look brilliant, by the way, because that rate is probably as low as it's ever going to be again. Do we expect these things to change? We don't know. Never mind.
Right.
Your crystal ball is as good as mine. Thank you.
Okay, I
Sorry.
move we accept resolution number 1086, issuance of a tax revenue anticipation note not to exceed 7.5 million.
Second.
Motion made by Christy Dawson and seconded by Dr. Frank Rivera. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Rivera.
Aye.
Trustee Pav,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson.
Hi.
All right, so it's moved forward unanimously. Next, contract with the School Site Solutions.
Thank you, President Dawson. This is a little bit unique. This request is a contract for professional service. As we all know, Director of Facilities and Transportation positions is currently vacant. But this doesn't mean that work stops. We have a lot of projects. We have day-to-day, we have transportation matters to be carried out on a daily basis. And so we need a temporary person to help us supervise and to really lead our team. So this is a contract for up to an amount, but it's up to me to work with the person. So the rate at this point is $110. Is actually discounted from about anywhere from 12 to 24%. It just for full disclosure that I have worked with this consultant in one of my previous districts. And so it helps in terms of knowledge, knowing the person, the knowledge, and also the qualifications. Also stated in the information portion of that, the rate is $110 is slightly lower than a total per rate per hour than our current position, which is good. Because I was looking for savings between self-attainment job and the current position. But there's also the consultant asked for up to 2 nights of hotel bills, actual bills, no mileage or a meal allowance, which can be very common, typical of a consultant contract. So with that, I'm just open up for questions.
Okay, board questions, please. Mr. Path?
At 8 hours a day, that would be a fairly expensive contract. What's your expectation once things get rolling?
I would say initially at least 2 or 3 days per week.
Okay.
But remember, though, the position is vacant. And currently, positions, if you take into total compensation, costing us $115, right? Current position. So we're not using more than the budget. It's already, this money is already there. It's budgeted. Makes sense.
It is, it seems a little unusual, although I'm sure it is strictly sized to our district to have transport and maintenance in one person. I mean, certainly Carmel has a separate transportation guy, but they go 600 miles a day. That district has not very many more people, but a heck of a lot more area. I can't imagine LA Unified, how many thousands of miles a day.
Oh, yeah.
Is this something that we want to split off at some point or just keep those in the same boat? And it's quite possible it makes no sense whatsoever to ever split it out as 2 separate positions. I think it was with Lisa at one point, wasn't it, Ralph?
That's correct.
Yes.
Foreman.
And we combined them. Are you thinking about that at all, or is that just?
Well, I would say probably about 8 months ago when the recommendation at that time was to dissolve the foreman position and kind of evolve into a administrative assistant 4. That's what the position is, what we have. So that's currently in place of the foreman position. In the past, we do not have a secretary, assistant position in the department.
Okay, That's correct. We lost 2 people on this. Yeah. Thanks. That's what I have. Thank you very much.
Okay, Dr. Rivera.
No questions.
Okay, I'm delighted to have you have some support and also very excited that there's some potential out there for finding a replacement. So good work.
I was really happy to see that there's no mileage on this. Is there a cap on the hotel?
That's a good question. I had a discussion with a consultant and would be actual and he's to be mindful of the cost. He knows how I work.
Yeah.
And I would not expect something that's gonna be like a rate at Pebble Beach, something that's gonna be local.
Be at the Bite Away.
That's
Actually, I don't know what
Bite-A-Wee,
the Bite a Week, or I don't know what that
Yeah.
costs, actually. That could be horribly expensive. I never stay at a hotel when I'm here at home.
I stayed at that hotel when I was interviewing for this job.
You know?
Bite-A-Wee.
Oh, you did? Okay, all right. Well, I know you'll keep an eye on it anyway, so just asking.
Trustee Carolyn Swanson.
I'll just be really brief. I'm thankful, Song, that you were able to find someone so quickly. And if you've got faith in this person that they'll do a good job for our students and keeping our schools maintained and safe, then that I have trust in you. So thank you for this item. I don't have anything further.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment? Beth Shamas, please.
I have a question about why is the funding source out of routine restricted maintenance budget?
This is one of our budgets, all our maintenance department and grounds are funded from there. I just want to be very clear, explicit.
Okay.
I know we always call about general fund,
Yeah.
but it's RM, routine restricted maintenance.
Okay. And the other concern I have is like, since he's actually a consultant, right? Would you be interested in having him give feedback at the end of his time here in terms of, any changes that might be needed structurally about, because it's a director position and we didn't used to have it, but we have it now and I'm sure it's necessary, but it's a good chance right now to look at it and make sure that it is what you want it to be. And is cost-wise or anything else that he might, since he's coming in, differently, he could be giving suggestions just to.
Absolutely. It's one of the other things to be assigned.
Oh,
So when I'm meeting with him.
good.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment? Okay, not at this time. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to pass contract with School Site Solutions. Thank you.
Motion was made by Mr. John Paff, seconded by Dr. Rivera. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Dawson,
Aye.
trustee Rivera,
Aye.
trustee John Paff,
Aye.
trustee Brian Swanson,
Aye.
trustee Carolyn Swanson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to summer school principal salary schedule revision, and we'll hear from Billy Mackey.
Good evening, Billy Mankey, HR Director. And this item is being brought forward to increase the summer school stipends from $4,000 to $6,000. Last year, we had one person doing summer school and intervention. And this year, we're increasing our scope in summer school by adding in support for learning loss. And principals are meeting with our staff and recommending students. So it's going to be a little bit larger and more work. And we think the salary should reflect that. So that's our recommendation.
Okay, questions from the board?
Ralph, there was a question asked about this and you wrote an answer to. Do you recollect what that was?
Yeah, it was, the question was, excuse me, the question was this amount paid previously? And is there a new position? I believe it was. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember exactly, but the answer was, yes, we had the 4,000 previously to one person that was doing all of the roles, and it's just insufficient in terms of staffing. And again, trying to recruit with that dollar amount was unsustainable. So the intent is to create a little more appealing through an increased stipend, and then separate the principalships out so that it actually addresses the needs that are out there, especially with the known need for increased intervention services. So, and it's coming from ESSER funds for a couple of years. With the it was a question of funding, the additional.
Okay, thank you for repeating that. Apparently I read that too late in the evening. Do we know who the summer school principal is already?
We have the ESY principal, which is Claire Davies, and we don't yet have the second principal for regular intervention.
And really not to beat up on it, but 4,000 to 6,000 to 50% seems
a big jump,
a little capricious. I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's not a, how did those monies come together?
Well, the monies came together looking at if on the page that has the actual salary schedule.
Yeah.
You'll see that in years past, before we broke it down into a stipend, it was actually on the salary schedule. But it's work that is done during, after and in between a principal's regular workday. If it's a staff member, they're still doing all this work in addition to the regular job most of the time of summer school. So we moved it from salary to a stipend. And if you look at the salary, the last step on the salary schedule was 13,456. So this would be bringing it, for summer school, the cost to 12,000.
Thank you very much. And yeah, really, I apologize. Actually, I guess it's unnecessary. I know that it was split into two. So thank you very much.
Over the conference in December, I learned a phrase: don't eat something. I gotta figure that out before I do, huh? I guess I didn't learn it that well. Yeah, that's correct. But the sentiment behind it is, it was mentioned that this is from ESSER funds, which is not continuous input of funds. And this is it is a 50% leap, which is a pretty big. Is this just going to shift into a different funds? Is it going to be a continuing? You think that the workload is going to continue?
We anticipate, well, the funding is, we know for sure is for the next 2 years. And then we would like it to continue after that.
So the funding is just going to shift from a different source.
Right.
Expression, Frank, I think, is don't use one-time funds for things that eat.
Right.
That's
right.
what you were looking for.
Thank you. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
All right, so so the learning loss thing is to deal with COVID and everything, but you're saying you see that just ongoing?
I see the stipends moving forward, yes.
Well, I just have I think I'm with them a little bit, that it's a little issue. I mean, I certainly think there's learning loss. Do you have numbers right now, what we're looking at?
No, we're gathering them. And we talked the other day at the high school. We had quite a lot of students, I think 80 or so. Is that correct?
80?
Potentially, yes. And then the elementary was unclear at that time, and Mr. Rogerman was out of town, so I can't, speak to that.
Okay, and then middle school as well.
Right, middle school was a lot lower. They said like 25.
Okay. And would summer schools be held at the various sites?
We talked about that too, and we're just discussing where they will be held, and for the ESY summer school. We're trying to have, especially the SDC at Robert Down, hoping to maintain it in that classroom because it's important for those students.
Right.
The problem is we might be having some construction on that site during the summer. So we might not be able to get around that. But middle and high school, we're looking at putting them together potentially at the high school.
Okay, where I am right now is, I think it sounds really good. I love that there's some funding at this time. I would not be comfortable just saying indefinitely, I'd like 2 positions for summer school. That would just be me. It just seems, I'd like to assess it, maybe in 2 years, it's brought up again and it's looked at to see, you know, is there a need? Because we're not just talking principals. I mean, we're talking, this is very extensive regarding teachers and finding teachers who will work in the summer. There's so many other considerations. And the potential of 80 is different. It's, you know, does it end up being 30? I just would like, would not like to do a stamp carte blanche on it. So I'd be in favor for a couple of years and a revisit.
Okay.
Sir.
Still puzzled by the whole eating comment, but
I can't even wrap my
Just-
head
it just
around
says
it.
if you're hiring somebody with one-time money, then you either have to let them go
yeah,
or you have to find other money.
I was,
So-
well, yeah, and then I went off on this tangent and I'm sorry I got distracted. I heard most of what you said, Christy, but I was like,
Well, why listen to me if you can try to
If you're-
figure up the
is it-
quips?
an oyster that you're not supposed to eat if it hasn't opened after it's been cooked, I think.
Yeah.
maybe.
Don't eat it if it's
Anyway,
already open.
That aside, I'm sorry, Billy. I'm in favor of it. I think you make a good point, maybe not indefinitely, that we should come back and reexamine it, you know, but I'm still in favor of it.
Yeah, I'm in favor too. Trustee Carolyn.
Boo. Oh, I'm already unmuted. Yeah, that was my question actually that Path brought up that I had sent over in advance, and that has been answered. So I don't have any other information on this. I think there are some public comment folks waiting.
Yes, there are.
Can
There
I-
are 2.
May I come back for a second?
Oh, I'm sorry. John Paff wants to say something else.
Just, I think for us, it is a 2 to 3 year recovery for anybody who's, I mean, we should just be planning on that. It's going to be 3 summers before we get back to the point where we only have the children who would have been necessary in the summer. And that's just kind of a fact. We're just, yeah, it might be a little more staff this summer. It might be a little more ESY, whatever. But my expectation is we have a couple more years. Because, you know, people were 2 to 3 months off. It's just going to take that long. So, which is okay. If you were in 5th grade, by 8th grade, you'll be good, but it's just going to be a little bit. So I expect that.
Yes, sir.
If I may, perhaps just add a couple clarifying points. There are 2 programs that we're talking about here in the summer. There's the regular education program that covers regular education from TK through technically 12. That one position covers those grade spans with the understanding that there really is a different kind of program for elementary students, TK through 5, than for secondary students, 6 through 12. So that one person has to deal with that grade span and then divide up the work between 2 different, essentially, pedagogies and methodologies of instruction. So that person is responsible for that entire program across the span. I've done that before. That was my first administrative gig. It's not as easy as it sounds because yes, there's hiring, there's staffing, there's coordinating, there's all the pieces that come into play with it. Numbers can vary up and down, but just want you to bear in mind that the scope of responsibilities is very, very broad. Now, that's one person. The second person is dealing with essentially the special education program, which I gather you would guess is very complicated as well, because you're essentially taking their entire special education services that they've had during the school year and bringing it into summer. So all the supervision, the planning, the IEPs, the testing, all of that extends into extended school year, ESY. So in the past, we've had one person that has done all of that for $4,000. And that's not a lot of money, A lot of people don't want to engage it, because why would you want to engage that much work for that little amount of money other than to help get the experience? So we've watched this happening over the years. It is a lot of work. So we knew that for special education, as we began to survey which teachers would like to come, our current existing teachers who know the students, know the plans, know the programs, who would like to come and instruct in the ESY, none of them were at this point interested. Don't blame them. It's been a tough year. Things are hard. So there's going to be the recruitment challenge that comes, let alone the organizational piece. So I'm trying to paint that this is a very difficult picture. It's not easy. So the amount of money that we're talking compared to the amount of work is very, very minimal. It always is for summer school. I think Trustee Paff is correct. This is going to take some time to sift through. And in fact, we were already seeing some of that need before we went into the pandemic. So again, two positions, two totally different kinds of programs, one of which is dealing with the entire spectrum of the general ed program across elementary and secondary. So I would encourage the board to consider that the amount of money that we're talking about is very small compared to the amount of work that's happening. And also recalling the conversations that we've had in the past, that intervention is critical for our students to regroup across the gap. This is our way of beginning to deal with that in a long-term way. Hitting into the general fund for an increased amount of out of $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 perhaps, I think, across the entire program, I don't think is that large of an impact compared to what we gain from it. Those are my thoughts. That might help.
I have one more question. Haven't we not had summer school for the little kids in the past?
We have focused on intervention. Many moons ago, we had a program that was just open, wide open, anybody, just come for summer to just be engaged. And then we realized that was too broad. It was too much for us to handle because we weren't recruiting enough teachers, and it was really hard to maintain the program. I think at one point, actually, and Beth may remember this if I'm not correct, I think it was 6 weeks versus 4 weeks. Then we whittled it down just because we were trying to focus now on intervention only. So now we're handpicking students that with certain conditions couldn't make it. So that's where we are right now. But obviously those numbers have increased based on the need.
Okay, well, I think the money wise, I'm not hearing, I mean, it is a little bit of a pop, but that sounds good. I just still think a couple of years to check in and see how it's evolving is good. And Trustee Carolyn, we'll get right back to you. Song had something to say?
Just from a fiscal standpoint, we are doing away with regular 13,000. We're crossing it out. So typically without COVID money or not, we would have to pay this money. Does make sense? So we have to budget for this, because if we're going to run a summer school, because 13,000 could be split between ESY principal or another person running their credit recovery or intervention, or one person to run the program to overseeing both categories. So I just want to be clear. This is in a way fiscally looking at it, slightly saving money, because not only it's less, and also we're shifting 50% into COVID. Recognize that the board has said we'll look at it in 2 years. So I just want to clarify that.
Okay, Trustee Carolyn.
I didn't have anything further.
Okay, thank you so much. Public comment? Erica Chavez, please.
Hi there. I saw the numbers, and I also kind of just wanted to point out that knowing lots of teachers in special ed that have been asked and approached for ESY, that offering the administrators more money isn't going to sweeten the pot for the rest of the staff. So if the administrators are getting a 50% increase, albeit, yes, I realize it is a big, heavy lift, but that the hourly rate for certificated staff for summer school service has only increased 25% over the past couple of years. There's an equity gap thing there that may need to be addressed if you're trying to recruit qualified staff to service in the ESY program and in the Gen Ed intervention program.
Thank you very much. Shannon, please.
I wanted to echo what Erica was saying. I think that, principals getting a raise in what they are expected to do and all of those things are great, but the teachers need to be paid more money to do the summer school job as well, because I think that the expectation for the teachers to raise, the levels of what the kids are doing and close that gap is much bigger than what we need for the principals. Yes, principals do a lot of work, but I think the teachers at this point are having a hard time coming to summer school for $3,500 when the teachers are getting, or when the principals are getting paid $12,000 a month for that same job. So I feel like that if you really want the teachers to come in there and close that gap, you're going to need to increase the salary that the teachers are getting at that time as well.
Thank you for sharing. Amy, please.
Hi, Amy Ramos. My daughter participates in the SPED program, and I will just say I've seen firsthand the lack of equity that is given to the staff for the load that they have. There has been an issue in staffing since my daughter started at the her specific site, and it continues to be an issue. And I really think that we should, as a board and all together, figure out a way that we can look at that and bridge the gap there to ensure that we get more help for everyone in not only ESY, but the SPED class as well.
Thank you for sharing that. Any other public comment at this time? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Can I ask,
Christy, oh, sorry.
go ahead, Carolyn.
Carolyn.
Yeah, well, I would like to see an item, this is not a motion, but I'd like to see an item come back. Are we planning on talking about salaries for summer school teachers, aides, classified and certificated? Are we planning on talking about that?
No, we have not. I mean, it's part of it would be in negotiations, I'm assuming, because that's part of the negotiable process.
What is it now, Ralph? Is it hourly? The hourly teacher rate?
I'd need to defer.
Yeah, the teachers are paid their hourly instructional rate according to the bargaining agreement.
So the answer would be not at this time.
Correct.
All right. So I move that we approve the summer school principal salary schedule revision.
I'll second.
A motion was made by Christy Dawson, seconded by Brian Swanson. Roll call vote, please.
I just want to be clear. We're actually we're actually cutting the total sum of money, but we're redistributing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so it's not a. Okay.
Yeah, they're making, right now, the two principals in total are making less than what originally they were.
Okay, and in our negotiation, I'm sorry, Christy, for.
It's okay.
taking over. In our negotiations, whatever we end up with, we are increasing the hourly teacher rate as well. Do we have a number for our expectation? We should have thought of this in friggin' September for what summer school is going to look like. You probably did. It's just me. What's our estimate for that budget right now?
For the budget, I'm
For the whole
for that
shoot
one,
match.
so I'm not sure where.
I mean, it all ties together, but we can go ahead with this motion. Go ahead, roll call.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, roll call vote.
Trustee Dawson,
Yes.
Trustee Rivera,
Aye.
Trustee.
I'm sorry you froze. I don't know if you just asked for me. Did you call my name?
Yes.
Okay, aye.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board calendar, future meetings. Is there anything changing?
No, there are no changes. So unless the board would like to entertain a change now, otherwise no action is necessary.
Okay. Board, anything you want to? I think we're looking good. All righty. Now we'll move on, please, to information discussion. 2021, 22, and 22, 23 budget discussions.
Thank you, President Dawson.
Sure.
We are starting building the assumptions for 22, 23. Can you see? Okay, I think it's good. Okay, wait, say it. First one, obviously, we're going to talk about revenues. This chart here, it shows this is based on the first interim. If you is it big? Let me just screen. I'm going to try to see if I can make it a little bit bigger here. Or is it visible enough? Let me see. Will be enlarged. It's not letting me, so maybe I don't know. Louise, you think it can make it a little bit bigger? Yeah. This, yeah, I don't, oh, maybe it's blocked by this, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have so many screen.
There it is.
They're a little bit bigger. Okay, there we go. Because the second interim will be presented to the board next week, so we're still dealing with the first interim. Just real quickly to show first interim showing that the bottom line is 394,000 negative deficit, but it's not really because of the carryover funds. And every time when we present this, we talk about this. Every interim reports, we have to show the carryover money that we received last year, that we're spending it in the expenditure equation. So artificially showing the deficit. In terms of the fund balance, at first interim is showing 15.2%. This is just not, PowerPoint is not scrolling down enough. 15.2%, 18.7%, and in the third year is 22. Now, I think this is something the question keeps coming up about as a huge reserve that we have. We have not settled yet. So let's say we settle for, just put an artificial number. Let's say we settle for 3%. We need to deduct more than 9% in the third year, because the 3% is something like Dr. Rivera said, something that eats, it's ongoing. So we have to put into the salary accounts year 1, year 2, and year 3, and also compounds by step and column of each employee. Either the certificated, classified, or management or confidential employee, they do get a step movement in the salary schedule. So minimally, in the example of the 9%, you have to subtract at least probably 9.35 up to 9.5% with a step and column each bargaining group. So you just do the math very easily. So this is something for us to bear in mind. It doesn't mean that 3%, it just subtracted from 15.2, we get 12.2, and then the bottom line stays, the third year stays 22. No, you subtract at least 9.5%. Okay. Next, that's about revenue, so assumptions. The next one obviously is about CBES, looking at number of student counts. Now for basic school district, it's not as really critical as LCFF school districts, because the funding is based on per pupil and per ADA from the state of California, but for us it's locally funded. But it's still important for us to know staffing, not so much about the revenue per head count from pupil to bring in dollars, but also, but it's more about, the expenditure, the allocation of staffing. So we look at it, the classrooms, the class sizes. We had already started the conversation, started meetings with school sites, and looking at this first shot of the projections of the 22-23. And we'll keep monitoring this into spring, and especially going to closer to the summer. And we'll monitor it. And obviously, right before school starts, we'll see the adjustments to happen. So this is, again, just estimates. And this is was presented to the board in January. So the total is for the year is 2023, 22-23 is 1,824. It just coincidentally is the same number, total number as this current year, but in terms of per school, it varies. As you can see, we really have declining enrollment. The year before is 1,922. It's almost, we lost almost 100 kids. So that's enrollment. Next, we're going to talk about staffing. This is just information. Obviously, we do not have 22-23 yet because once we have to start building the budget, once the board approved, we're going to have the FTEs. But it just to show a record here where we are in terms of total FTEs. This year is 299.62 FTE, and the year before, last year, is 290.14. This is FTEs, full-time equivalents. And then the third year, the year prior is 297, and then 18-19 is 314. Now, this is district-wide, not just general fund. This is all the funds, adult ed, facilities, child development, food service and such. Now, compared to last year, it could be this year, we could be, because of COVID, we're hiring more, could be more help. So the FTEs fluctuates a little bit. But this is just to show where we in terms of total FTEs. The next one, stirs and PERS within expenditures equation. Obviously, one of the biggest costs is pension. 22-23 for stirs. Right now, as it stands, is proposed at 19.1%. As you can see, is more than, look at the percentage of increase. Right. The governor in his proposed budget in January did not put any extra dollars, one time or otherwise, to help school districts with pension costs. This is very unfortunate because the state really has a strong reserves at this point, is 2.18% increase compared to current year. And this shows, just based on our first interim estimates projecting into next year, just this one percentage alone is going to cost us more than $386,000. So that's just stirs. And then PERS, same thing. Next year is 26.1%, is a 3.19% jump from 22.91. Just to clarify this, is it would have been higher this year and something with 2021 because COVID, the governor paid money to buy down for those 2 years, but it's nothing on the table to help us for next year. Now there's a discussion by CalPERS board, because CalPERS is not, the rates are not set by the state like the STIRS rate, but set by the CalSTIRS board. Potentially because of strong returns of investments, that we hopeful that it may go down a little bit, but we do not know yet until May when the vote is in by the CalPERS board. So by that time, potentially we could already have a draft of the budget, because we need to have a first version to the board in the first week in June and the final adoption in the second board meeting in June. But obviously when that happens, if it's by July 1, we can change it for the actual payroll. It's just for in terms of budget adoption, we need to have to put in something in the works for us to produce our budget. Next one is about healthcare costs. It's by calendar year. This is by MCSIC. It's not by fiscal year. For 2022, started just January 1st. These are the new rates. And to the left here is just showing the copay. How much is the dollar amount for is it not showing up here? Because I think I did not have enough space to show the column. But there is a copay for each of these plans. In looking at this, it shows how much it has gone up for the year. Collectively, for all the plans, is 5.63% increase from last calendar year. See, then the next one is about step and column. This is all these budget sheets are part of budget documents, and this is for 22-23, and the names are really left out for confidential purpose. And this is in alphabetical order, and I'm going to go down to the last page. It shows the rate. It's 1.54%. This is for certificated non-management employees. And we put in over the years about 2 projections for column adjustment, meaning teachers who come in or support staff, certificated support staff who will, who may come in with additional service credits, meaning their transcripts, additional, credits. So we just put in for 2 with increase of a net of 1.59%. Now, the 1.54% is based on what this year's, how in our financial system, how it moves these employees into next year, which already consider all the retirements that we have known about this year. Now, if between now and June with additional, it will change this percentage. Step and column, because we have it on the chart, is a lot of work to put individual names one by one, so we don't have it for classified. Also, it changes more frequent with classified, but I just put in here collectively from the report how much what percentage for each group. And it's earlier it shows 1.54, but as of February, because it depends on the date I ran the report where we place employees into that, it fluctuates 1.52, 1.51, or 1.54. And it shows in here, I put down here 1.54 as of late February. And for CSA, it's 1.89%. Management is 0.53, obviously, because already reached a certain step. If you don't have a lot of new employees, it's not going to change a lot. Confidential is 0.95%. And the next one, next slide is about per pupil allocations. And obviously this is based on the 1,824 students. What we did this at this time, the proposal is to increase by $10 per pupil. Many reasons. One of them that's very obvious is inflation. Everything has cost so much. The school sites have been very responsible. This is for the classroom supplies, crayons, glue sticks, papers, this sort of thing. The dollar amount doesn't hurt us. If you look at it, it's actually a little bit, only a couple $1,000s more than the current year. I think that is there's one more. Okay, this is important. This is property tax dollar revenues. At first interim, we built this for next year at 5% and then 3.5% for the third year out. But what we are suggesting this point, increase by 0.25% next year and by 1% the third year out, because of the receipts that we are seeing coming in for December. While whether those actual receipts will stay and not be taken out between now and April, we don't know, but we're hopeful. So far, the months have been steady. So we're recommending this 5.15% for 22-23 and 4.15% for 23-24, which you'll see at the next board meeting coming up for the second interim. And I think that's it. Any questions?
Questions, board? Mr. Paff?
I appreciate that you walk through the net change as you go and you look at that reserve, which says, look, we haven't settled. And 1% in the next year is 2%, and the year after that is a 3%, and that's consistent. So, and just multiply it out. If it's 3%, it's 369. If it's 4, it's and you see that number go from 22. 4 would be 48. And 12 goes to 22 to 10, and that assumes everything's going very well. And nobody, say, for example, starts a war. However, things happen. The 5.15, I'm glad that we're seeing that may increase. And eventually there'll be a full building on Lighthouse, which will assist us a little bit. The 3.12, I guess if we're still, really next 2 weeks, you'll say whether or not that number holds, right?
That's correct.
So and then a month after that. Yeah, this is not, we're not in trouble, but we're not going to be flush here, by any stretch. So let us be conservative, and as people retire, we should consider whether or not that position has to be, especially with the declining enrollment, how we refill and backfill all the way across the board, not just I guess everywhere. So the exception to that, I think, is probably adult ed, which seems to pay for itself independent because the teachers are only hired if there's people, but everywhere else we should be wary of immediately backfilling. So
You brought up a very good point, Trustee Path, because at first interim, the second year, assumption was 5% growth. So let's say we get 6%, doesn't mean we get additional 6% because we already utilize a 5% to pay our bills. Wherever we settle this year, we use it already. So anything that incremental than what we have already put in assumptions, that's the only thing that's new.
No comment. Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, very, very thorough. And I think your points you're bringing up right now, Mr. Paff, are extremely important. The declining enrollment and costs of doing business is kind of brutal. And I do think it's important we're conservative.
I'll echo that. Well, again, thank you, Song, for all the detail and just the way you present it all the time. It's appreciated. But again, what Trustee Paff and Dawson had said too, we know this, we've talked about it before. I don't know if as a board, we need to give more direction about it. I think admin is already paying attention to those falling class numbers. And at some point, we have to address that. And I think we are, but just it's something that we're going to have to do. Our class sizes are getting smaller. They're very, very manageable right now. They could be bigger and still be very manageable. So we'll get there, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Carolyn.
Yeah, I'm just looking at all these numbers, and I know that our district continues to leave money on the table by not accepting developer fees. So that's what's on my mind tonight. And maybe we need to talk as a board, bring that back as an item so that we can, I'm sure Song has these forms coming across her desk where she has to say, no, we don't want any money from new developments and renovations that are above a certain size. And there's a lot of work right now in the state with increasing housing throughout cities. And I want to see housing increase for cities, and it means that there may be more kids coming into our district, and that's why developer fees were developed. So so that's my comment tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any public comment? Okay, not at this time. Okay, we'll move on now. Thank you so much, Song. We'll move on now to future agenda items. I think there are some on here that have been sitting here for quite a while, Ralph, so.
There are, and we added 3 items, as you can see down below. Those were added at the last board meeting. And we will address one of them the IT goals on the 17th. And then I think we just addressed the AB 361 discussion.
Yeah, we did.
I can remove that one as well.
Yep. We have some committees that were asked for in November. And the Diversity Equity Committee, I think from the conversation earlier tonight in your superintendent's report, I feel like the whole district is working diligently on that. So I appreciated that we were able to be a bit of a part of that intro so we can see what's going on. So I don't know that we need to keep that on here. Anybody have opinions about that? We need to lighten the load a little bit.
Yeah, I have an opinion on it. That was-
Okay.
Yeah, that was an item that I had requested, and I really, I saw a need for our board to have some sort of just growth in this area of cultural proficiency. And so I love the equity and inclusion, and I'll just call it cultural proficiency, professional development plan that we're on. I asked for this item because I was worried that perhaps the board wouldn't take part in it. And I did appreciate going to the that first kind of kickoff. That was great. Ralph, maybe you can mention, is the board going to be kind of part of this? Because if not, then I think we should explore having some sort of a committee. So where are we at on that, Ralph, on making sure the board is part of this growth?
Sure, yes, we spoken with Dr. Flores and Dr. Nunez, and as they presented as well, when they presented to the board, we do intend to try to set up a time to have just a public, a special board meeting that public would certainly be allowed to participate, and just for the board to talk about the issues, do a little bit of a mini version of what they've been working with staff and get the board caught up on the progress and to be able to have some of this dialogue. They were talking about timing when that might be best, especially in light of having the small groups meeting. So it would probably have to happen before, we're hoping to have it happen before June, but we're working with the timing. But we do want to have a meeting that was just for the board and public to catch up with the work that's being done.
So I'd be comfortable changing this request from a committee to just having it be that we do what Ralph just said, is that we keep it on the list, so we make sure that it happens.
You're asking to keep it on the list?
Well, technically I'm saying we can delete this, but we need to make sure that the special meeting happens that Ralph was talking about.
Okay, I think that sounds reasonable, and Ralph's made a note of that, so that's good. We have a couple other committees. There was a lot of requests for committees on November 18th. The board committee CSBA workshop, I think that was yours, Carolyn. What was that for?
Yeah, so as a board, we decided that we wanted to do a policy overhaul where we were gonna, get together with a CSBA vendor or CSBA as a vendor and go over all of our policies as a board. And so I wanted to emulate, I appreciate the idea that Ralph brought up that, other districts have ongoing policy committees. And so it would be 2 of us board members, we can rotate in and out. But we would always be working directly with staff, would be presenting us with updates on policy and then making sure that they get implemented.
Aren't we doing something? Isn't there something that's set out there in April? I think Carolyn, you're doing it. I think Brian, did you sign up? As did I, that has to do with policy, correct? So we're initiating that and actually doing that, I think, in the next month or so, Carolyn.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And there was 3 of us who signed up. So it sounds like it'll need to be a public meeting. This is for ongoing policy committee. So it may be kind of mislabeled here, but if you want to, I'm open to deleting it now and then we can revisit it after the April meeting and kind of see where we are.
I think that'd be perfect, because I think once we do that, we're going to have a much better idea of how that continues to roll out. So why don't we delete that now? And after that meeting, we'll remember to come back and kind of take a look at that regarding policy.
Okay.
Madam
Make it-
President, if I
When do
may,
we-
just
Yes.
to clarify a piece. That workshop is not a public meeting. It isn't that all three are going to be together.
No,
at once.
exactly.
I just want to clarify that Trustee Carolyn had a comment that that all three, so it has to be public. Actually, it's
We're
not all
each-
three at the same time in one room. It's
One
one at a
person.
time.
One person
One
goes in one day. Yeah. You understood that, right, Carolyn?
No, actually, so trustees can't attend all 3 days. We can only choose one day to attend.
Well, other trustees want to be a part of it as well. So yeah, we have to divide it up. They want one person. So I might be Monday, you'd be Tuesday, Brian would be Wednesday. So we each would have a chance to participate in the actual process and sort of see how it's done.
And then Ralph, after that, if after that 3-day process took place, then would the work done be presented to the board as a whole?
Yes, then at that point, the CSBA group will come back and with the revisions and then begin the process, the public process of approving the revisions to the board packet, the board policies.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're following CSBA's lead on that, so.
Oh, I'm glad we clarified that. So that's good. Yeah, it's not all three. We'll each get a chance at that.
Ms. Dawson, may I?
Yes.
Ralph, we asked CSBA to work on something in October. Have you gotten feedback on that first item?
Hang on a second. I'm just moving back to my notes here.
No.
It's the parent
Yeah,
oriented.
yeah, I did, and they never came back with anything. I'll have to speak with them again. I think they originally had talked about recommending policies that were put into place for ongoing virtual meetings in the future, like in terms of protocols, that kind of thing. They didn't pursue it, and probably, I'm not sure exactly why, but this is something we can do independent of CSBA if the
I'm
board would
sorry.
like to create policies around how to protocols for remote meetings.
Respectfully, we're talking different items.
I was looking at October
Item,
21st.
well, look at the October 5th, 2021 line above it. We had asked CSBA to come back and say, look, this is what a parent should.
Oh,
be
right,
looking
right.
for.
Yes. Yeah, no, I haven't heard back from them and I'll
Okay.
ask them. I'm
Thank you.
sorry. I was moving the other one.
That's a pretty good juggling, so.
Okay, well, we've got some things off. So that's a good start. I know, did you say something? I'm sorry, John. Okay. All right, we're getting very close to the end here. Anything else right now?
Should we start the discussion on reconfiguration?
Well, that's been something that's certainly come up. I know when I joined the board, there was talk about that and looking at it and that it'd been looked at and then it kind of got put away for a while, but
Well, I thought yes, yeah. The short answer is yes.
let's do
I
it.
mean, I thought we sort of had, I know I kind of was more veiled about it, I guess, in the way I phrased it, where it's like, we need to talk about equity as it relates to our different school sites and how there may be disparities between things, especially on an elementary level. So I could have just said reconfiguration. So, but yes, we should be talking about that.
Okay,
We've not talked about it for the last
4 years.
6 years since I remember the first time I heard it and somebody just said the R word at a board meeting. And I was
Ooh.
like, the R word, what's that?
Okay,
So-
well, so can that be added to something we should look at? Perfect. Okay. All right.
Yeah, and then
No,
there's one last thing, because I was just answering questions about the committee. So I would like to talk about developer fees as an item, so we can kind of develop a plan, like, do we want to do it? Do we not want to do it? If we do it, let's have some outreach so that we don't have what happened last time where people were saying that they were confused and didn't have information. This is a lot of money we're leaving on the table, and I want to look at it again.
I mean,
Well-
but it isn't, Carolyn. I mean, we can bring it up again, but it's not a lot of money. It works out to once in a great while, it's $100,000 one-time fee, and the rest of it, that's the reason it was looked at and really decided again.
Well, plus we had gone to the community and asked for all the support for our bonds and our schools and renovation. So they viewed it very much as a double whammy to them. And they were quite upset about it, actually. So we kind of made a decision to back away from that. And that's been what, about a year and a half, 2 years?
It's been 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, it's
All
been
right.
longer than
Wow.
It's been a while.
Time flies when you're having fun.
But maybe we just have a report from Song on how much we have lost, because I'm guessing John's guessing. I know that
I'm not guessing, Carolyn. We went through the numbers 3 years ago.
we did, and we had lost $100,000 on just one project. And that's not a small amount of change when we're looking at ways to make sure that we can continue on. It's
We
not,
agree to disagree on it.
yeah, and that's totally fine. But this is something that many districts do. This is something that was developed by the state to help districts when there's going to be an increase in folks coming into the school district. There's a lot of land use change happening. I think it would be prudent just to relook at it. Of course, you don't have to agree with me, but that's where I stand.
So what's being asked of you is to look at what the figures for before we bring it as an agenda item, to bring it back and just say, look, this is what a developer fee would entail and would bring to us on a regular basis based on what we know about construction within the city.
Do we look at the last study, the estimate by the
You
company?
can-
We did.
However you want to do that. Does that work for you to start, Carolyn?
I would hate to direct Song to spend $3,500 on a study if we have everyone on the board just like not wanting to do it except me.
Well, I am very cognizant of the fact that we heard loud and clear from various members of the community that
We heard from landlords. We heard from a handful of landlords.
The Chamber of Commerce, actually, they came in, spoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Opposition.
Right, strong
Yeah.
opposition.
Here's what I would suggest, because Song is busy enough right now with trying to deal with all the staff shortages that we have. I would suggest if you are able to share the old report, if you still have it on file, whatever we looked at, that would be great. And we can all get, because we have some new eyes on here also, we can take a look at it. But I recall looking at that and seeing that it was like, this was not some pot at the end of the rainbow that we were forgetting to check. It was not that much money, so.
It was presented, it was a board packet. We can direct it to board meeting. It's right, it was not approved. It was presented, it was attached, and we can.
I think that's
say-
a great idea. If we just look at that, that'll be a very good indication. And then Frank is new, and that's good to see. So why don't we do that? And again, that does not create a bunch more work for you, Song, which I think right now is too much. Okay.
You know what? After hearing you guys discuss it, I'm fine waiting 6 months or a year on it too. So that's an option as well.
Okay,
Or
let's
better.
wait.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anything else right now? I think we're pretty good. And I think we're, 10 o'clock on the dot. Okay, I'd like to move forward and adjourn this meeting. And Buck, just remember you're on West Coast time now. Don't be acting all tired because you've been running. Okay. You go to sleep right away.
Yeah.